Good evening. Welcome to Burnley Borough Council Full Council Meeting, 29th of October 2020. Members of the Council present: Councillor Wajid Khan, Mayor; Councillor Anne Kelly, Deputy Mayor; Councillors Anwar, Baker, Birtwistle, Briggs, Brindle, Campbell, Cant, Comys, Emo, Ferrier, Fewings, Foster, Gill, Graham, Hall, Harbour, Hosker, Hussain, Ishtiaq, Johnston, Arif Khan, Lubna Khan, Shabana Khan, Gordon Lishman, Margaret Lishman, Lone, McCann, Mahana, Mottershead, Newhouse, Pate, Emma Payne, Mark Payne, Raja, Royal, Sumner, Tatchell, Townley and Townsend. Officers present: Mick Cartledge, Chief Executive; Lukman Patel, Chief Operating Officer; Catherine Wardby, Head of Legal and Democracy; Imelda Grady, Democracy Officer; Georgia Robinson, Administrative Officer; Alison McEwen, Democracy Officer; and Mark Hindman, Graphic Designer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you very much, Alison. Good evening, members, and good evening, members of the public watching on the live stream. Without further ado, we've got a lot to get through this evening. Let's start by item 1 on the agenda: minutes of the previous meeting of the council. I will move those minutes. Madam Deputy Mayor, will you second those minutes?
I'll second those minutes, Mr. Mayor.
And it's busy saying to me, I can't join the meeting. The meeting hasn't started yet, and everybody's up. Okay.
Councillor Martin, you're now in the meeting. If you'd like to just mute your microphone.
I will, for the rest of the meeting, probably.
Oh.
The most common phrase of 2020 is normally going to be "you're on mute," but on that occasion you were on mute there, Councillor Martin. So, as Madam Deputy Mayor seconded those minutes, and if there's no dissent, I will take those minutes as approved. Okay, the minutes are approved. So item 2 on the agenda: declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Andy Fewings here.
Thank you, Councillor Fewings.
Apologies to those that were at scrutiny and have heard these before, but item 6B on the agenda has references to Lower St James's Street in the report. My husband has a tenancy on Lower St James's Street through Creative Spaces Burnley CIC. He is the sole director and shareholder. It's also mentioned in item 6C, references to Lower St James's Street and also the Heritage Action Zone. Again, my husband has. Sorry.
Thank you. Have you passed them over to the relevant officers yet, or are you just going to?
Yes, I've done that, but I have to go through them all on the call as well. I'm advised. So again, my husband has the tenancy on Lower St James's Street. He's also a member of the culture programme for Heritage Action Zone, and a stakeholder in the Action Zone Consortium. Creative Spaces Burnley is also a stakeholder for the culture programme aspect of Heritage Action Zone. There's also references to Burnley Leisure. My husband has a discrete consultant contract to finish the work of the Light Parade submission to the Arts Council due to maternity leave of a member of staff. The work was completed some months ago, but due to Burnley Leisure having no time to sign off the work due to COVID-19, it hasn't been submitted to the Arts Council, and therefore the invoicing is yet to be done, and therefore I'm declaring it as an interest. Item 6D, again, references to Lower St James's Street and the Heritage Action Zone for the reasons I've set out above. And item 6F, the licensing report. My husband holds the premises license for 160 St James's Street, although that is in the process of being transferred, and he's also a personal licensee. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Fewings, thank you for that comprehensive list of declarations of interest there. Are there any other declarations of interest apart from Councillor Fewings?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Councillor Townley, I've been advised I don't need to make a declaration of interest, so I just want to make sure that that is correct, as I only heard that a few minutes ago.
Yes, Councillor Townley, in relation to the appointment of mayor, you don't need to declare an interest. It's not an invitation to mayor, which is slightly different.
Yeah, you happy with that, Councillor Townley? Yeah, okay, that's been clarified. So that's completed that part. Let's move on to the next item, which is item 3 on the agenda, Mayor's communications.
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 4 on the agenda, public question time.
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 5 on the agenda, motions to the council. Can I point out to members that once the motion has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. Members may then only speak on an amendment. Quite a few motions today. Let me start off with the first motion. The first motion is 5A, James Anderson. And I have the great privilege and pleasure to move this motion in what's been a very difficult and challenging numerous months now for the town and the country. There has been an array of good news, and one of the very good news is our very own Burnley's James Anderson broken records by taking 600 international test match wickets, the first ever fast bowler to reach that feat. I have a great pleasure to remind the members and members of the public and members of the council that in 2011, he was given the freedom of the borough at the time, put forward, moved by my good friend, colleague, Councillor Andrew Thatcher, and seconded by my friend, Councillor Charlie Briggs. And since then, James Anderson has gone on from strength to strength. He's been a great ambassador for the town. It gives me a great pleasure to talk about somebody that's a true role model for young people. His character, his nature, the way he's conducted himself in his professional support and outside. I have great delight in talking about this man. And I think, you know, if you look at somebody playing 156 test matches, that itself is a huge, huge achievement. And then taking 600 test wickets. You know, I never thought in my lifetime we'd see somebody reaching that wonderful feat. And it's a great news story, and it's even more important that we recognise further James Anderson's fantastic contribution to the sport of cricket, but also to serve his country, his town. He's represented Burnley on an international stage, and he will be regarded as one of the cricketing greats. And that's why this motion wants to recognise this outstanding achievement of James Anderson, wants to honour James Anderson on his being the first ever fast bowler to achieve 600 test wickets, and to just honour him by actually having his name on a new or an old street, by renaming it an old street. I hope it's a street. I appeal to the head of street scene, group leaders and relevant bodies, and if you can identify a suitable road which should be named after James Anderson. I hope it's got a good connection to his childhood or his own upbringing, because he was born and bred in Burnley. Council members of the public, it is a huge, huge achievement, and we mustn't let that go lightly. And I think this is the right thing to do by honouring one of the greatest ever ambassadors and sportsmen this town has ever produced. We are very proud of you, James Anderson. You make us proud, you make country proud, you make your town proud. So continue doing what you're doing, and we here in Burnley recognise and appreciate you being one of the historic fast bowlers, first one ever to take 600 wickets. So I'll leave it there. I move the motion. On that note, as I move the motion, could I please ask my great friend and colleague, Councillor Andy Thatcher, please could you second the motion?
Happy to second the motion, Mr. Mayor. And your speech covered it completely there. Jimmy has moved on from when we honoured him 11 years ago. There are 12 cricket nights, of which only 2 are bowlers. In both of them have also could bat a bit. He had 383, and Alec Bedser, who's a little bit before my time, who had 267. We have a lad from Burnley who's got 600. Unfortunately, we can't bestow the Order of the Garter, but I think we should follow the motion and put something down in the borough which will leave a mark for future generations. I second.
Thank you, Councillor Thatchell. Any member want to come in? Okay. I think there's no member here.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have to commend you on that speech here. If I hadn't known you better, I'd have thought you were doing an interview for Sky Sports.
Maybe that's my next future career plan there. Thank you, Councillor Hoskins, for that nice suggestion. But yeah, appreciate that. Is there anything else you want to say, or anybody else want to say anything before we move? Okay, Andrew Newhouse. Councillor Andrew Newhouse, can you please come in, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a young kid, I played a lot of cricket, and something you obviously dream of as a young lad is growing up and maybe playing for England or, you know, your local town, or it managed to do both. And 600 wickets is amazing. And I've sat and watched many, many hours of test match cricket. You could sit there and be bored, or as a kid, I sat there on my bed in my TV. My parents weren't so keen on sport, so I got to sit there and watch it on my own day after day after day. And obviously growing up as a young man, I was just probably similar sort of age. He managed to get one and play for England. So to think you could do something in your town to represent that, and his career forever. I mean, it's going to last a long time. It's something that you dream of as a kid, and I'm sure it'll be a pleasure for him as well. So I'm more than happy for this motion. Thank you very much. It's great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're very welcome. And again, like yourself, I was a keen cricketer, but I didn't make it past the school cricket team. You're probably glad if I did cricket, I wouldn't be here now, would I? Doing this important meeting and chairing this council. So anyway, let's move towards the electronic vote. We'll now go to the vote. Electronic poll will be conducted. The message will appear shortly on your screen. So for this motion, please follow the instructions. Once the poll is finished, the result will be displayed on your screen. There we go. You should be able to vote. If anyone's having any problems, just let us know. We can manually record your vote.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I am having a trouble with it. I've inadvertently voted against it. Yes, I know I'm quite contrarian, but I'm not actually against this. I don't know if I can revoke that vote.
I think officers will pick that up. Can you pick that up, please, Alison?
Yeah, we will reflect that in the results manually.
Thank you for that, Councillor Cummins. I was getting quite worried for a second.
Councillor Gordon Lishman and Councillor Emma Payne, are you having an issue? I think you may need to confirm. No, that's... Yeah, I think that's everybody done now.
Okay. What's the results there? Anybody?
Just bear with me. Okay, so we can see it does say 41 for, but that should be 42 for and none against, as Councillor Commis indicated.
Well, thank you very much. Is that okay? Can we move on, Alison? Yeah, you happy with that?
Yep. Okay,
well, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, everybody, on that motion. We shall now quickly move on to the next motion, which is item 5B, which is the aerospace industry. Members, you will have received an email earlier today with an alteration to the motion, which is being taken under Council Procedures 14.7. Councillor Frank Kant, will you please move your motion as altered?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have pleasure in moving this motion. Would you like me to read the motion out, Mr. Mayor, or?
If you want to summarise the motion, if you want to read out whatever you feel comfortable, Councillor Kant.
Well, I can summarise in the fact that that what happened is in about August, I put this motion forward in an abridged version, but of course things have moved on a lot since, and of course as reflected in the motion, we've recently had an announcement by Rolls-Royce that they're intending to move jobs to Singapore. We've also had a second lockdown. We're sort of struggling a lot. We've recently had a recovery plan for Lancashire by the Aerospace Task Force, which is again reflected in the addition to the motion. So therefore, what we resolved to do has obviously been altered slightly. I hope everyone will support this motion because it's very important. I recognise as a former aerospace engineer the contribution that's put into this town by skilled people. And I also note that when we're spending lots of money and improving our town in educational facilities, extra high quality housing, etc., etc., I don't want to see a situation whereby people come out of university and look around in Burnley and find that, well, maybe a job in Tesco might not be the sort of thing that I've been aspiring to. So I think it's vital that we keep hold of high quality jobs as well as high quality housing and high quality education. So basically that summarises it. I just want to see support for the aerospace industry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're very welcome, Councillor Frank Kant. I know there's an amendment coming later, but before the processes, if there's no dissent, I will take that the meeting's consent for that alteration which Councillor Frank just talked about. So that's okay. Nobody's coming back to that. Councillor Sue Graham.
Sorry, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I would like to object to the acceptance of the amendment.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. On what basis, Councillor Lishman?
On the basis of the second part of the amendment, which refers to prohibiting the offshoring of manufacturing processes that are of strategic national importance to the United Kingdom. The reason for my opposition is that that is a step which would provoke at least equal and opposite retaliation. We are no longer bound, well, we may not be bound by EU rules, although the extent of any possible cave-in on the subject by our Prime Minister has still to be seen. Just think about the effect on UK manufacturing industry if the French and German governments and the European Union also say they're going to prohibit the extension of manufacturing of strategic national importance to the United Kingdom. Now,
sorry to interrupt, Councillor Gordon-Lishman. It's Lukman here. I think in terms of the procedural aspect, your important points can come after the motion's been seconded. This is just to accept the amendment to the motion, if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine. I was just responding to the mayor's question.
Yeah, I just wanted to basically know everyone's got the actual changed the alteration, but that your discussion, debate, deliberations, we can have them after it's been moved, seconded by Councillor Sue Graham. So can I ask Councillor Sue Graham if you would like to second the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm seconding this motion, partly because of my own interest in the aerospace industry. My father and both my brothers worked at Rolls-Royce, and I know full well the devastation that was caused to East Lancashire when Rolls-Royce had to lose so many staff in the 70s and then again in the 80s. So I'm happy to second this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Graham. And can I just, I know Councillor Feeney's got an amendment. Can I just bring in Councillor Lishman first, as he just spoke there and wanted to continue his point, please, Councillor Lishman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, my point was about the acceptance of the amendment. I'm entirely happy with the first part of the amendment that refers to supporting the LEP the LEP Aerospace Recovery Plan. My concern is about the second part of it. This is the sort of action which President Trump has been demonstrating in relation to China, and it has a directly contrary effect to the one that is intended. You can't unilaterally protect your own industry without other countries taking comparable action against you. What happens if France and the European Union decide that, or Germany decide that, say, Siemens manufacturing processes or Airbus are of, quote, strategic national, or in the EU's case, EU-wide importance? As soon as you start that sort of tit-for-tat process, it has a direct effect on our own industry. My suggestion to you, although I very much support everything else Councillor Canty is saying, my suggestion to you in relation to this is that the effect on our aerospace and other engineering industry would be significantly greater if we followed this than any gains we would be likely to make.
Okay, thank you very much for your contribution, Councillor Ishman. I'll just move on to Councillor Fewings. As thank you for what you said there, but let's bring Councillor Fewings in because I believe you have an amendment as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have an amendment. It hopefully has been circulated to everyone, but I'll just quickly set that out. I mean, before I do that, I just want to say that I'm broadly in support of this motion. The reliance on this industry and local supply chain businesses cannot be underplayed. Many of our residents will suffer significant hardship if this industry locally collapses, which, as we all know, is a possibility given COVID-19. Having said that, I feel strongly that we need to seek to prioritise and benefit the workers, not just the shareholders of these businesses. And on a brief look at the LEP report, which was only introduced to this motion today, I can see that it says who's being consulted, and they're all the aerospace, essentially the aerospace companies, but there doesn't seem to have been any consultation with unions or the workforce. And so for that reason, I'm bringing a motion to make it clear that any support that we are calling for puts the needs and the support for the workforce as a priority. And the other thing that I wanted to add is that I think that these are really, really challenging times, and we need to do everything we can to support residents and people that are working in this industry locally. But in the event that there are redundancies in this sector, I think we need to be also lobbying the government now to make additional funds available for enhanced support packages for workers transition to sustainable jobs based locally. So that's the premise of my motion amendment, and I obviously propose that.
Okay, so we've actually got a proposal of amendment now. Just to be clear, so this is the actual amendment we've got proposed at this moment in time. Have you got someone to second that proposal, Councillor Fewings?
I'll second that amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Is that Councillor Hall?
Yeah.
Any member who wants to say anything? Don't all jump at once. Let me just check my screen to see if anybody wants to come in. So,
Councillor Newhouse, I believe, Chair.
Oh, I can see
Councillor
more.
Baker.
Thank you, thank you, Alison. Councillor Newhouse first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, another topic close to my heart, really. The cricket background came from my great-granddad and my granddad. Both worked at Rolls-Royce, and these are obviously industries that over the generations now, as you can see there, have sustained our towns up and down the country, and it's something we're going to have to invest in. It's something that COVID is going to have affected, and there are going to be job losses possibly, and it's something that we do need to have an effect on if we can, something we can try and anything that we can try and do for this side of industry, it's going to become more useful for us. Using China and other areas of the world to develop and to do all of our manufacturing work, it's going to become crazy. We're going to have more British, and this is something that we're going to have to invest in, something we're going to need to deal with now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Newhouse. Councillor Baker, please.
About that, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, a little bit confusing. The first thing by Frank Cant, where he changed his original motion, is actually still the original motion. It's not an amendment to it. That just becomes the main motion because he's changed it before we started speaking about it. So as I understand it now, we're now with Councillor Fewing's amendment, and at this stage we should vote on Councillor Fewing's amendment, which, if it wins, becomes a substantive thing, etc. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
I'm reading the chat now. I've just seen the chat now from Councillor Lishman, but let's take one motion at a time. So let's deal with this amendment, one amendment at a time. So we're dealing with this Councillor Fewing's amendment, which he's just been talking about, which has been seconded by Councillor Hall. So Howard, you are correct. Let's talk one motion, amendment at a time. So on this amendment for Councillor Fewing, does anybody else want to come in before we go to back to anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Townsend. I have put a request to speak in.
Oh yes, sorry. I'm just sorry, Councillor Townsend. I do apologise. It's a bit of a bad line you've got there, Councillor Townsend, but I've just seen your RTS in the chat, so please fire away, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. The Aerospace Recovery Plan is a coherent package of proposals to protect the businesses and jobs in the aerospace sector in Lancashire during this pandemic. It's about avoiding redundancies, retaining skills and capacity, and not setting out a position for negotiating away good high-paid jobs, which this amendment seems to do. It refers to basically trying to just cherry-pick the redundancy elements of it and basically try and get an increased package for the workers, when this is all about trying to retain good jobs, high-paid jobs, not just for today's generation, but for future generation. So the amendment is really cherry-picking the elements that the Greens like within the plan and destroying its coherence, and with it, any pitch that as Lancashire we could go to government with. So I think we should reject this amendment because it would make our story incoherent. And we should move back to the substantive motion. I know what Councillor Fewing is trying to do here. Sometimes I perhaps just have a little bit more respect, because I know he's never had a good word really to say about the aerospace sector in the past. And really, I think, you know, there's a hidden agenda behind his amendment in terms of what he wants to do here, in terms of making it an incoherent package that would be unsellable to government. So I think we need to get back to the substantive motion, because the actual aerospace recovery plan is all about avoiding redundancies, not trying to sell off and get the best price for the jobs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marcus Johnston, please, next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was staggered, frankly, to hear what Councillor Lishman saying, that we can't protect our own industry. And if we did, the wrath of the French and the Germans would be upon us. You know, shortly after what was then the new French government, the Macron government, came in, they proposed doing two things. One was anti-union legislation to free up the labour market, but the other one, and I've just been checking this, was they proposed barriers to the acquisition of companies which they considered to be in their strategic sectors by anyone from outside the EU. Now, the Germans have been looking after their own in exactly the same way for years and years. Now, I'm that rare beast that I voted and campaigned for Brexit, and I'm very glad I did, because it means that we would be able to protect our industry, and we will be able to protect our industry. So, Councillor Lishman, I really think you need to do a little bit of research before you say things like that, because the past masters are protecting their own industry are the French and the Germans, and have been for years.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnson. Can I bring in Councillor Ferrier, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'll start off with saying it's not too often I do actually agree with Councillor Townsend, but I think he's absolutely on the money when it comes to Councillor Fewing's amendment. This is about trying to preserve jobs in aerospace and trying to support it through these unparalleled times for that industry. And he's mentioned about sustainable jobs, but I certainly sure there be sustainable jobs in aviation in the coming future, since aviation is heading that way. I think regards to the point made by Councillor Johnson, I think it's been a tad cruel towards Councillor Lishman there, I think, because I sort of in a slight middle ground of saying not necessarily prohibit the exposure of such industries, but I think such industries should require some sort of government approval to check, like checks and balances. I think a prohibit is a far too blunt of an instrument due to the situation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrier. As nobody else wants to speak now, I'm going to actually go back to Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I think Tom Commis had a right to speak earlier. I don't know if he's
Let me have a look. Sorry, just checking. Councillor Tom Commis. Yes, I can see that. Sorry, I do apologise. I'm just missing these for some reason. Councillor Commis, please come in.
I did have an RTS, Mr. Mayor, but I'm now slightly confused as to whether we're discussing the Green amendment or the actual motion.
Just to clarify, Councillor Commis, we're just specifically looking at Councillor Fewing's amendment at the moment.
Okay, I will reserve the right to speak when we vote on the motion, as it turns out.
Okay, so I'll remember that. Okay, there's no more speakers in.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I'm going to bring you back in, Councillor Frank. Just 1 second. Before I bring you back in, I need to first bring in Councillor Fewing's, because Councillor Hall didn't reserve the right to speak. So Councillor Fewing's, as proposer of the amendment, you have the right to come back in.
Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Baker. What is the problem, sir?
Councillor Fewings comes back right at the end. If Councillor Kant wishes to speak first.
Oh, no.
Councillor Fewings
Just 1 second.
back at the final
One second, Councillor Baker. 1 second. Please hold your horses, sir. Are you coming back to speak on? Do you want to come as just a discussion as a member as this amendment at the moment, or do you want to come back as the original proposer? I believe you just want to come in as part of the debate now, Councillor Kant.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about
okay.
Some of the support that I've got for this amendment, for my motion. I certainly don't accept the amendment that's been put forward by Councillor Fewings. I think what it's doing is sort of piggybacking on the motion. I think it's totally unnecessary what he's proposing, and the point was made by Councillor Townsend that we shouldn't really be discussing redundancy packages. We should be discussing saving jobs, and that's a point that I wanted to come in on.
Okay, thank you for coming in now. You will also have opportunity to come in at the end as well, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Fewings, you have the right as the proposer of the amendment to say something now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Johnson says, I'm also quite staggered, particularly with Councillor Townsend's remarks, making out that there's some underhand thing going on here, when we've all been circulated a last-minute amendment that is apparently from Councillor Frank, but from the track changes we can clearly see was written by Councillor Townsend. So if we want to talk about underhand amendments, I think we should look at that. But in terms of the substance of the motion, I am the son of an engineer that worked in a factory and a mother who worked in Tesco. And I am astonished with the Labour Party this evening. One person is proposing this motion and making derogatory comments about people that work in Tesco. And the other person is not putting the rights of workers first. That is what this motion is seeking. My amendment to the motion is seeking to do. I'm seeking to prioritise the workers in any support package that we have. I watched as my father, who worked in a factory owned by an overseas company got all the support from government that you could imagine, but slowly but surely siphoned it all off overseas. And that's exactly what will happen if we do not prioritise the workers ahead of the shareholders and the businesses. And I'm not talking about the local small SMEs where there are, essentially self-employed people. I'm talking about the big international companies who need to put the rights of workers first in any settlement that we receive. I also take issue with the comments about redundancy. I think that anyone who is paying any attention to what is happening in the country right now, when you see that the civil aviation industry is absolutely on its knees, it's working at about 15% of what it was just 9 months ago, to pretend and to lie to the residents that you are going to find a way that there will be no redundancies in this situation is, quite frankly, again, I'm astonished. So the wording is in there for the right reasons. It's there to acknowledge the scale of the difficulties that we face and that we need additional money for support if there are redundancies. And the wording is very clear that it's in the event, not we are having redundancies. But to pretend that this isn't on the cards is really just unfair to the workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fewings. Councillor Kant, you were the original proposed, but you have said something. Is it okay if we go to the vote now, or is there any last little bit you want to add in?
Yes, yeah, I've got to the vote.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Let's go to the vote for this amendment proposed by Councillor Fewings, seconded by Councillor Hall. Electronic poll will be conducted for this amendment. The message will appear on your screen now, and let's follow the procedure as we normally do. Are we doing, Alison? Are you okay? Quite a few people voted, yeah? Okay. Okay, that motion has been rejected. So if there's no more amendments, we can go back to the original motion, and I know somebody wants to come in there.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say is I apologise deeply for anything that I said about people working at Tesco's. It was not meant to be derogatory in any shape or fashion. All I meant was that maybe if you had a university degree, etc., you may not wish to go into that that sort of job. But I do apologise.
Noted, Councillor, can appreciate that. Can I just bring in Councillor Tom Commis, because you did reserve the right to speak on the original motion. Councillor Commis.
Mr. Mayor, I did indicate that I wanted to move an amendment to delete subsection 2 of the motion as amended.
That's fine, because that's an amendment again, another amendment. So you want to just repeat that again for me, Councillor Lishman?
I want to remove subsection small Roman 2 from the original amendment.
Okay. Have you got anybody to second that amendment? Anybody can second
I'll
that?
second that, Mr. Mayor.
Who's that? Who's that speaking there?
Sorry, Councillor Ferrier, sorry.
So Councillor Ferrier did that. Any member on that amendment?
Could I perhaps move it?
Okay. So you want to basically just want to go for the electronic vote. Nobody wants to come in there.
I'm sorry, I keep trying to say that I would like to move it.
Yeah. So you moved it, and it's been seconded. So by procedure, we've got to ask any member.
Well, I don't think you actually gave me a chance to say anything in the process of moving.
I do apologise. Go ahead, Councillor Lishman, if you want to.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we have just turned down an amendment from Councillor Fewings on the argument that it is not part of the coherent plan from the LEP. Could somebody, when it comes to it, show me where in the LEP action plan it actually proposes setting up a protectionist regime to support our aerospace or other industry? In fact, when I look at the LEP plan, what I see, and I'm looking at their list of key recommendations, is a recognition that Lancashire contributes to all the major civil aircraft programmes led by Airbus, Boeing and Bombardier. That is to say, a French-based EU company, a US company, and a Canadian company with, as I understand it now, substantial Chinese connections. If we want to start talking about strategic national importance, what we are doing is telling those industries and the governments of their countries that they are free to do the same in relation to our industry. Because of the openness of UK industry in recent decades, we are more vulnerable than most of them. We are certainly more vulnerable than either, for instance, the US or the European Union. In those circumstances, it seems silly to start a tit-for-tat trade war out of which we as a nation are likely to be the major losers. I have no objection at all to the major thrust of the LEP plan. I think in some respects it is unduly optimistic, which may be a point to make in relation to the motion as a whole. But this particular part of it, which I can't see, the particular part of the original amendment to the original motion, does not, as far as I can see, feature in that plan, and clearly it would have significant and deleterious effects on local engineering industry.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lishman. Thanks for that. Can I just, any member, I think I've got Councillor Townley. Do you want to come in, Councillor Townley, on this?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm getting slightly confused here. I was working off agenda item 5B. I believe there was an amendment to that particular motion on the aerospace industry. We are now back speaking about the amendment. And now there seems to have been yet a further amendment.
Yes.
Which we are now going to go. But at the end of the day, we have two amendments on the table which need to be voted on before either or any become the substantive motion, or we go back to the original motion, which is the one that was sent out with the agenda pack. Yeah. Am I correct?
Yes.
No, just to clarify, Councillor Townley, Lookman, it's just to clarify, there was an original motion on the table which was altered by Councillor Frank Can. That motion was amended by Councillor Andy Fewings. A vote took place on that amendment. That amendment
which
was
has
not,
fallen. Yeah.
which was not carried. Since then, we've gone back to the original motion, which Councillor Gordon Lishman has put forward an amendment to, which has been seconded by Councillor Dale Ferrier, which is currently being discussed.
Right. So, right. Okay. Let's leave it at that. Let's get on with that. Right.
So let's move progress. Next speaker, Councillor Commis. Do you want to come in on this amendment, or are you still going to come back on the original motion, Councillor Commis?
I would like to speak on this amendment. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Commis.
So I think what's happened here is that with the original agenda pack, a motion was circulated, proposed by Councillor Frank Cant, that I think would have garnered near universal approval. It was a very simple and easy to understand motion, and it was not calling on the government to do anything that was either contrary to its established policy or contrary to anything that we've done in the past. I would certainly have supported that motion, and I think it's relatively uncontroversial. Councillor Lishman has enumerated some of the problems that would arise from basically going into this protectionist mode. And it's probably worth pointing out that if we were the sort of country that enacted these policies generally, then the foreign companies that exist in Burnley and have invested in Burnley and make up a significant portion of our aerospace sector would never have come here in the first place. Part of what makes us attractive to inward investment is the fact that we are an open economy, that we're not by nature protectionist or haven't been for many decades. And I think this particular alteration to the motion was ill thought out, and I would urge people to vote for Councillor Lishman's amendment, and I will come back if this amendment falls and speak again.
Okay, noted. We're all on one page. We know what we're doing now. Councillor Townsend, can you come in, please, as you've indicated to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in quick response to Councillor Lishman, he's quite right that the point in question that he's trying to delete is not in the aerospace recovery plan, but as Councillor Johnston said earlier, I think it's a good complementary addition that we can go to government alongside supporting the aerospace recovery plan in terms of trying to protect, the crown jewels of our manufacturing. And I think people just need to reflect here in terms of at Bourne Aldswick, we have a world-class manufacturing facility doing fan blades, high tech, top of the manufacturing tree of advanced manufacturing, stuff that we should really, really, really want to keep hold of in this country. But Rolls-Royce have taken a decision basically to outsource it to Singapore for short-term gain. And what we're doing here is basically discussing, okay, there might not be much we can do because Rolls-Royce, there are no laws or rules at this moment in time that they're breaking. But let's just think of the message we're sending out here, that basically we're prepared to sell off our jobs to the lowest bidder anywhere in the world, no matter what the implications are for our local industry and our local supply chains. I think we should have confidence in ourselves that we can develop world-class advanced manufacturing capabilities. And then instead of selling them off to the cheapest producer elsewhere in the world where they can make the profits, let's keep the jobs here in this country so that we get the benefit. I'm not saying that we should tear up every international agreement in the world, but basically for these strategically important and advanced manufacturing processes, we should be trying to find a way of holding on to them and not just allowing our so-called blue chip companies to sell them off or manufacture them anywhere. So, again, I think it's extremely important that we keep that clause within the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. As there are no more people wanting to indicate to speak, I'm going to bring back now Councillor Lishman, who's proposed this amendment. Councillor Lishman, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was a little confused about the last contribution. First of all, the argument was that we couldn't include Councillor Fewing's motion because it wasn't in the plan, and then we need to include this proposal despite the fact that it isn't in the plan. He then argues that we should have confidence in ourselves and protect. Now, actually, if you have confidence in your own abilities, in your own strength, and in your own industry, you don't need to protect them. They can go out into the world and sell the products that they are making. What protection does is make you less competitive. And if you're less competitive, that is the point that the world discovered in the 1930s, that if you protect yourself and become less competitive, that is when recession turns into long-term depression. And that is what, as a world, we need to avoid. Let's just come back to the basic point that we're talking about. We're talking about the future of the aerospace industry. We're talking, and we'll come on to it no doubt shortly, about supply chains. In fact, Burnley is, in the main, a rather distant part of some key supply chains within the aerospace industry. If we want to protect them, we have to maintain those relationships. If those supply chains are shortened, we are the losers. That happens in spades, as amongst others the Social Market Foundation and the Resolution Foundation have pointed out. If you combine a significant effect of Brexit along with the outcome of COVID, in those circumstances, this is exactly the sort of measure which is bad for our industry, bad for our long-term competitiveness, and crucially, bad for jobs in a town which depends on supply chains which start in other countries. If we're going to start taking those sort of risks, then let's remember it is the livelihoods of people in Burnley which we are putting at risk. In those circumstances, it seems to me that we comparatively little debate with something that is bounced on us at the last minute, with, as far as I know, no significant advice on the economic implications of this sort of move. We are just being asked to go down a road which is deeply damaging to our town and deeply damaging to our country. And that's why I think we should agree this amendment and take this part out of the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. Can I bring in now Councillor Frank Cant as a right to reply, being the original mover of his motion? So before we go to a vote, the final say on this is with Councillor Frank Cant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It may surprise you, but I do, in a sense, agree a little bit with Councillor Lishman. And I want this motion to go through. And if we're looking at this this last point that we enact legislation to prohibit offshoring of manufacturing processes, then I'm quite willing to drop that. So therefore, I would accept the amendment and allow it to be substantive.
No, it has to go to a vote now.
No, it doesn't, Councillor Khan. If the mover and seconder accept the amendment, then it becomes a substantive motion. Councillor Kant is correct.
So it has to be second. Sorry, it has to be second. Apologise for that.
I'll second it.
So you've
Councillor
got-
Townley.
Yeah. you've got-
I will second Councillor Cant's.
No, sorry, just bear with me. It needs to be accepted by the mover and the seconder of the original motion. That's Councillor Kant who's accepted and Councillor Sue Graham who's the seconder. So if she accepts it, it becomes the substantive motion.
I'm sorry to prolong this, but I do not accept that amendment.
Right, fair enough.
So it means now we go back to that vote. So that's been followed procedurally with advice from the operating officer. So now we now move towards the vote. Electronic call will be concluded. The message will appear now, as you can see.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I've done what Tom Commis did before me and voted the wrong way.
Okay. You're following Council Commis now, here.
Yeah, this will be the only time that happens. In terms of the vote, I've voted for the amendment and I actually wanted to vote against the amendment.
So you want to vote against the amendment. Can you please note that, please, Alison?
I have done, Mr. Mayor, and I will reflect that in the results.
Thank you. So are we anywhere near result time?
We are. Just 1 second. Councillor Brindle, I think you need to press confirm to confirm your vote. Yep, that's everybody, Mr. Mayor, so just bear with me. Okay, Mr. Mayor, so we had Councillor Fewings voted for but intended to vote against. So that would be 14 for, 27 against, and 1 abstention. If everybody is happy with their votes, as displayed on the screen, so that amendment falls, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that, Alison. And let's now go back to the original motion, just for people, just to remind people, we've had Amendment 1 from Councillor Fearing, that's been rejected. The second amendment by Councillor Lishman, that's been rejected. So now we go back to the original motion proposed by Councillor Frank Cant and seconded by Councillor Sue Graham. I do remember Councillor Commis, you did reserve that, so I'm going to come bring in any member now on that. I remember Councillor Commis had reserved the right to speak. So the floor is yours, Councillor Commis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and be quiet. Further on in the meeting, I know I've spoken quite a lot on this. As I understand it, the motion now includes the alteration that was circulated pre the meeting, which I regret. I would like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Cant, both for bringing the motion in the first place and for quite magnanimously handing out that olive branch to Councillor Lishman's amendment, and I regret that that amendment fell because I thought it was quite wise. So essentially what we're discussing is nothing more than writing to the MP, asking him to make representations to the government, which I know from speaking to his office, he's already done quite a lot. And he's been in discussions both with the local businesses and with the trade associations that represent the industry. And I think as a council, we can all agree that that is something that we should look to encourage. I don't accept Councillor Fewing's prognostications of gloom about the industry generally. I think it's probably worth pointing out that the International Air Transport Association expects air traffic to be back up to pre-COVID levels by 2023-24. I don't see the industry being permanently on its knees, and so it's probably for the best that we or the government rather supports and continues to support the industry through this pandemic, so that once we come out the other side, we've still got a thriving local economy. As I said, the fact that Councillor Lishman's amendment fell does put me and probably many other councillors in a difficult position, because we're effectively being asked either to support a motion that contains an unlovely section, or reject it and reject the good bit as well. And some of us will have to think long and hard about that. But it's probably worth saying that whatever way the vote goes, I think we probably do support the initial motion that was brought, and in the event that we don't feel able to support the motion as it is today, we would probably seek to write separately to the government, making that point. So that's where I am at the moment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cummins. Before I bring in Councillor Lishman in, can I just say the motion and the alteration of Councillor Cant met the tests of motion, just to be clear about that. So Councillor Lishman, can we please bring you in, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do apologise for keep coming back to this. I was intending only to speak once in this entire debate. For what it's worth, and despite the amendment that's just been turned down, I shall vote in favour of the motion as it now stands. That's because I think it would be criminally irresponsible for the council not to end up with a statement in clear terms about the future of the aerospace industry, and in particular because of the LEP plan, which is a substantial and useful piece of work, which I think we should be seen to support. I am, however, less than optimistic along the lines that have been suggested. Partly this is because of the optimistic assumptions it makes about the end of the pandemic. And I think we are not yet at the stage where those assumptions in general can be relied upon. But also because I think that even their worst estimate of prolonged recovery is questionable. Why so? The key part of civil aviation which sustains the profit of airlines is business travel. It is already clear, as with people working from home, that there is going to be a long-term effect of the pandemic in terms of significantly less business travel. And it is that business travel which sustains particularly long-haul airlines. Secondly, we are actually seeing already airlines going under. And we have also seen significant parts of the travel and tourist industry going under. I have some involvement with that industry, and from what I hear, some of the biggest players are dependent on the next 2 holiday seasons. The first of those being the ski season, which is significantly under pressure as we get nearer and nearer to that season, with countries which are going to be looking at lockdown, and with our own government looking quite rightly at increased quarantine for people returning. If in particular the February half term is bad for the ski season, that is a very major blow to the travel companies which operate in that industry. I know of one of the largest companies in British tourism, which has been told by its owners that its future will depend on the number of orders for next summer that it has in place by Easter. We've already seen substantial losses in that industry, which have been accelerated by the pandemic, but which were happening anyway. In those circumstances, with real problems in the tourism industry and significant changes in business travel, it seems to me that the fiction that we're going to return to pre-pandemic levels of international travel by airlines are unlikely to happen. If people have significantly to increase their prices as a result of the need to get back a balance sheet that works, and as a result of tourism companies desperately trying to recover their position, if those prices are going to increase at a time of significant recession in our economy, then we and the rest of the world are going to see major problems that are going to come and hit us. In addition to that, and finally, you'll be pleased to know, when people talk about supply chains in relation to civil aerospace, they are shortening not just to the major providers, but to the buyers. Where is the major buyer of civil aircraft in the world? China. Why is Rolls-Royce outsourcing its work to Singapore? Because it is the nearest democratic state which allows the free operation of companies to China. In a world where those economic realities are facing us, we have to look very carefully at the future of our industries. One of the implications of that, which does come through the LEP report quite clearly and quite rightly, is about the importance of diversification. And it does seem to me that both in Burnley, as well as in East Lancashire, and as well as for the aerospace industry more generally, we need to be looking about the transferable skills which people who live in Burnley have got, and how those skills can be applied to new industrial possibilities.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. I have 2 more colleagues who want to comment on this. Can I appreciate your insight there? Can we just ask colleagues to be more succinct and precise to move progress on this? I appreciate everyone's view is important. Councillor Sue Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate the discussion about international aeronautical industry and international tourism, but I really think we should move to the vote now.
I appreciate. Thank you very much for that. Just one more speaker before we move to the vote, and then actually before the vote, Councillor Kant has a right to reply. Councillor Ferrier, you've indicated, please. Can you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I can't agree to move on with this, but I can very, very swiftly add on to what Councillor Lishman mentioned. I'm not quite as pessimistic as him with the industry, but he is facing significant challenges over the next number of years. Evidence has shown, certainly in the Far East, where the pandemic has been controlled, is passed a lot faster than here. Now, the first area of recovery is your short-haul, low-cost carriers, which the IATA expects will be a similar kind of recovery we'll see in Europe, but then the United States. Long-haul travel, yes, which is also very quite dependent on business travellers, has been affected by the advancement of teleconferencing software like we're using now. But I think the industry will generally recover to revert to the good times again, but it is a few years down the line. It's not going to be next year, the year after. It's going to be quite some time down the line. And when it comes to the aircraft manufacturing side of things, that'll be delayed further still due to airlines' reluctance to purchase new aircraft and maintaining older airframes. Furthermore, the other part of the aviation industry, which I think is often forgotten about, is that the air cargo sector in aviation is functioning, is very much alive and well, and is actually helping support a lot of airlines that have an air cargo division through these difficult times. But thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Ferry. Now, okay, Councillor Kant, you have the last right of reply. If you want to say something, fine. If you want me to move to the vote, please indicate.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate a lot of the comments that have been made. I just really wanted to get on with the vote. I've tried to make to make it simple. I tried to make it relevant for Burnley, and that's why I was prepared to maybe drop the, that final paragraph. But as it started, I did vote against the amendment because I felt that I should do. But yeah, so please, Mr. Mayor, wind it up. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Kant, thank you very much. The polling is open for the vote, but I really got your intention there. I know your intention. Thank you, Councillor Kant. Off you go, people. You can vote now. Sorry about this. We got there in the end, didn't we, with this one?
Councillor Ishtiak, I think you need to press confirm on your vote.
Okay. You can just scroll up a bit. Thank you, Alison. Okay, let's move progress. That motion has carried. Thank you for that. Appreciate that, Alison, as always. So that motion has carried, Councillor Kant. Appreciate that. Okay, let's move on to item 5C, the executive response to single-use plastics motion. Just note, this just report is for noting only, people. There's no decision here. It's for the executive. Councillor Sue Graham, will you please move the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under normal circumstances, I would support the motion put forward by the Green Group, but with some regret, I'd recommend the council note the recommendation set out in the report, and this is maybe something we would get back to at a future date. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Townsend, can you second the report, please, Councillor Townsend?
I second the report, Mr. Mayor. I think everybody in council agrees with the sentiments that Councillor Fewings had when he brought this to council, which seems many moons ago now, that it's only just arrived back. I know that Councillor Fewings had some concerns in terms of time had moved on and perhaps it wasn't relevant to bring this back at this stage. But the executive took the view that that's really not the right signal that we should be taking. Perhaps it doesn't go as far as Councillor Fewings would like at this stage, but I think it's right that we take a step in the right direction. And at least then we're sending a positive signal to everybody concerned about the use of single-use plastic and the fact that we need to reduce it considerably. So the executive don't see this as the end of the story, see it as the beginning of the story, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to this in the future. So I second, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Any member? I see Councillor Fewings first. I have Councillor Fewings. Go ahead, Councillor Fewings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for those potentially watching on YouTube, when I first became a councillor, I always got a little bit confused as to why things were just being pushed through quite quickly at full council. And that was because when you aren't in a group, you're not on the other committees like scrutiny committee. This has been discussed at length on other committees, which is why I'm going to keep this relatively short. But I wanted to explain that for the people at home, because sometimes it's confusing and it feels like everyone's made up their mind before the meeting, and that's because quite often it is discussed at length before it. So I'm glad that we're making some changes. I don't think they go anywhere near far enough. I do not agree that there are material financial implications, which is the criteria for removing this from the council vote. I find it astonishing that we say that this is a democratic process, but yet we don't have a vote on the recommendations, and I've made my views on that clear a number of times. I do hope that actions will speak louder than words over the next 12 to 18 months, and we take our obligations in terms of the environment, the climate emergency seriously, and we see some real change, because as we'll see in future meetings, you know, the sums that we talk about in relation to this are small fry compared to some of the money that we're spending elsewhere. And that, to me, shows a prioritization of issues of where we should spend money. And for me, I would like to see us invest in people's futures. And that means we need to take the climate, biodiversity and environment emergency seriously. So please do more than is said in this report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, one final thing, just a correction. It was actually Councillor Hall that proposed the motion. I know it was so long ago, but it was Councillor Hall's motion. Thank you.
Noted, Councillor Fewings. Can I bring Councillor Townley in, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as it stands, no party anymore has the moral high ground on recycling, upcycling and reusing. And I am very glad that this has now moved on and we can perhaps move to action rather than thoughts and words. And that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Just as you move the original motion, Councillor Hall, do you want to quickly come in, Councillor Hall, or are you okay?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Fewings has covered it.
Thank you so much. Councillor Graham, just want to come back to you if you want to say anything, Councillor Graham. Councillor Graham.
No, I was on mute. No, I would as I said, normally support this. I think it's worth noting that on my executive portfolio, I have climate change in that portfolio. So I will still be keeping an eye on things like this as we go forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Alison, am I right? There's a vote on this, isn't it? Am I right, Alison?
The report is for noting, Chair. So I think you can take it if there's no dissent.
Fine, thank you very much. Let's move progress. Thank you so much for that. Item number 6 on the agenda. Let's move forward to items for decision by the council. Can I point out to members that items for decision by the council are treated as motions? Once your proposal has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. Members can only speak again on any amendment. Item 6A, annual review of Treasury Management Activity 2019-20. Councillor Sue Graham, will you please move your report?
Yes, before I do this, before I move item 6A to 6E, I'd like to thank my predecessor in this portfolio, Councillor Maggie Lishman, for her steady management of the resources portfolio. I'd like both to thank her and ask her for her support and cooperation going forward. I'd be happy to consult with Councillor Lishman on some of the very difficult issues ahead as we move through the pandemic and into recovery. And I know that Councillor Lishman played a big part in the economic recovery strategy, and a lot of the decisions that we make in the resources portfolio in the months to come will be based on that economic recovery strategy. So I'd like to thank her and move this report. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Mark Townsend, will you second the report, please?
Second the report. I reserve the right to speak, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. You've got that note there, haven't you, Councillor Fewings? Councillor Alison McCune's going to... So Alison McCune, not Councillor yet. McCune will be moving to a lobby because of your declaration of interest. So, shall I wait for you, Alison, before we start debating?
No, Mr. Mayor, it's not for this item.
Okay.
I think Councillor Fewings was just noting that
Yes.
for the rest of the items.
That's fine. Can I just now bring in a member, please, on this report? There's nobody here who wants to speak. So we'll now...
Councillor Lishman, Chair.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Could we just clarify, are we moving all of the items or just this one at the moment?
We're just doing 6A at the moment, Councillor Lishman.
Right. I thought Councillor Graham said she was moving all of them. That's fine. I'm grateful for her words. I will be more than happy to be involved. I'd be grateful for some clarification about what that involvement might mean. And I'll also take the opportunity to congratulate our new head of finance, who I took up his post at a difficult point in time and is faced with nothing but more difficult times, I think. So well done, Mr. Hamilton Smith, for taking that role on. And thank you, Councillor Graham, for those kind words. I will be happy to be of use.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. It's great to see kind words all around. Let's have a look. Anybody else? No, that means I can't see anybody else speaking. So if that is nobody else wanting to speak, now we can go to a vote on this 6A, please. Alison. Alison. Thank you. Come to the rescue.
Alison, I may have made a mistake.
What's your mistake, Councillor Khan?
Oh, but I think I voted against when I meant for. I'm pretty sure that's what I meant.
You will be able to check at the end, Councillor
Right,
Khan.
thank you.
Chair?
You.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Baker. I presume that's you, Councillor Baker.
It's a night for confusion, and we're going to be very tired by the end of this lot. But the recommendation is that we note the report. We're not voting for it. We're only noting it. So I can't see what the vote's for or against. We're just noting it. Unless you're saying we reject the report entirely, that would be the against.
Yeah, but we've got to prove that we've actually noted the report.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Baker. Here are the results. Look, I know it's a long night, but if you can cooperate, we'll get as fast as possibly can through this, guys. Okay, what we got there? It's okay. That's fine. That's been moved, and sorry, that's been accepted. That's been noted and accepted. Motion has been carried. These are all seen as motions of the council. Item 6B. Can we move ahead? Do you need to take Councillor Fewings out now?
Sorry, Chair. I was trying to, I can't unmute myself from the sharing screen. Councillors Baker and Hosker didn't vote then. I can confirm that Councillor Lubna Khan voted for, which I think was her intention.
Yeah.
You can have a vote for if you like. It was I got lost halfway through that in the point I was raising, but I'm quite happy to note it and vote for the note. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Hosker, did you want to say anything now before you vote?
No, I'll just put it for.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. So that's okay, Alison. That's been carried.
Yep.
Is this where you take Councillor Fewings out now? I believe
it is. Yes. Just bear with me, and I will confirm when that has been done, Chair. I'm just trying to find him in the list.
Thank you for everyone for your patience as we moving through these technological advances of creating extra rooms for people.
Right, Chair. Councillor Fewings is in the lobby.
Okay, item 6B, 2019-20 final capital outturn position. Councillor Sue Graham, will you please move your report?
Yes, I'll move this report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mark Townsend, will you please second your report? This report.
I'll second the report. I'll reserve the right to speak, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Howard Baker, have you want to speak, Councillor Baker? Or is
I think that must be hanging over for the last
that's
one.
fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Councillor. If there's no other member, I can't see any more member. Let's now go to the vote, please. Can we now open the electronic vote? So you're voting on item 6B in a second. Look at you guys. Oh, you councillors all become experts on this now.
Mr. Mayor, can we not just sort of nod these through? Because I don't think anybody's going to find anything contentious, rather than go through it, slow it down by having taking votes and counting, etc.
I think you have a point there. I will take that point, and let's just, if it's okay with everybody else, I'd like to vote the rest of these reports on all the way to till 6E. Is that okay, Alison? Can we do that? Is that technically possible?
If members are happy to do that, and the reports are just for noting, then that is fine. You can take them as noted.
Okay. So
if there's no dissent from the meeting.
No, I can't see any dissent. Okay, that's everyone's happy with that. Councillor Kelly, that looks delicious. Whatever you have in there, Councillor Kelly.
Is he doing a takeout?
Okay, so Alison, we're going to do the vote for all of them now, all the way to 6E.
Yes.
Thank you, Alison.
Chair, Councillor Lishman has a comment on item 6E.
Okay, as we're taking them all together, we'll take any comments of all the reports right now. So, Councillor Lishman, before we go to the...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just to note the and to agree with the comment that Councillor Townsend made at the executive regarding the overspend, a large proportion of which came from COVID, and to at that point make the point that our staff have worked solidly all the way through the pandemic, and a lot of that money had gone to support various elements of the work that staff were doing and services that we needed to provide. And I'd just like to comment on it, saying that we clapped all through the lockdown for the NHS staff, but I also clapped for our refuge staff and for all the rest of our staff, our furloughed staff that are in the Leisure Trust now, who are going out delivering supplies through Burnley Together Hub. And I think we owe a debt of gratitude to them, and to hope that they all have the strength to carry on whilst we're going through this very, very difficult winter that I think we all know is nowhere over by any stretch of the imagination. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Isham. I appreciate them comments. Just an important point. It's important to recognise Councillor Fewings isn't here, so we can only do C, D, and F. Let's do them now because that's where he's declared interest for, and we'll do E later. So C, D, and F. 6C, 6D, and F. Okay. The poll is going to open now.
Sorry, Chair. Do you want to just ask if there's no dissent?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I presume there's no dissent because nobody's coming in on RTS or anyone wants to say anything. So I think there's no dissent, so we're safe to go to a vote. Thank you, Alison. 6D, 6C, D, and F.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just having to change the question so that it reflects what we're doing.
Yeah, no, that. Thank you so much, Alison. You've been fantastic. The voting is now open, please, people.
Sorry, Chair, there seems to be a mistake here. You can't vote for 6F. Are members aware that it is the Licensing Act policy? Councillor Fewings has declared an interest on that. We just want to clarify that it's not a finance report per se. It's a Licensing Act report.
I've jumped to one as an I've jumped.
So I suggest that we don't do F at this moment in time because there may be members who want to participate in some discussion.
No, sorry. Yeah, actually, I apologize. Another report as well. Let's do 6C and D then. Yeah. 6C and D, and then we'll do E separately. We should have just gone through by one. Councillor Baker's and his fantastic progressive ideas. I note the intention, Councillor Baker.
There you go, members.
Okay. Okay, the results coming up shortly. Has everybody voted?
Councillor Gordon Lishman, are you having an issue with your vote there?
Shall I nip out and ask him?
No, it's fine. It's come through. Thanks, Maggie.
Okay.
Okay, you can see the results there. I can safely see items 6C and D have been passed, which takes us to item 6E. The motions are passed. So 6E now. Can you please bring back Councillor Fewings? He has joined the meeting. That's been confirmed. So on item 6E, could I ask Councillor Sue Graham, please would you move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move the reports, and I'll second what Councillor Maggie Lishman said about the staff working for both the council and for Burnley Leisure and their incredible work over the last few months. I think we've all seen how hard they've been working and what efforts they've put in to support the local community through this very difficult time that is unfortunately carrying on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're very welcome, Councillor Graham. Councillor Mark Townsend, will you please second this report?
I second the report, Mr. Mayor, and I add my voice also to the congratulations to all our staff for all the hard work through the pandemic and the work that they continue to do. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. Noted. Any member? No, can't see any member coming in here. Okay, if there's no member, can we please have a vote open on item 6C, final revenue outturn position 2019-20? Just waiting for the results, colleagues.
Councillors Hussain, Comys, Anwar, are you having an issue with your votes?
I've voted, Alison. It says it's gone through.
Okay, Councillor Shah Hussain.
I've voted now as well, so.
So that's Comys, Councillor Comys, Councillor Anwar sorted. What about Councillor Hussain?
I've voted, Mr. Mayor.
That's very nice of you. Thank you, Councillor Hussain, for voting.
Yeah, that's gone through now. Councillor Fewings, have you got a confirm button on your screen?
No, I had a submit button and it says, and I press it and it says your poll has been submitted.
Can we move on with this? And if you can't see Councillor Fumes vote, he'll just manually tell us which way Councillor Fumes voted.
For.
Okay, that is clear. Item 6E has been carried, has passed. Thank you very much indeed. And we now move to item 6F, Licensing Act 2003 policy. Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, will you please move your report?
Sorry, Chair, we just need to wait for Councillor Fewings to be placed in the lobby because he's declared an interest in this item.
All right, okay. So Councillor Fewings will be in the lobby. Hope it's nice and warm in there.
And he's gone from the meeting, Chair.
Okay, he's left. So now I will ask again, Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, will you please move your report?
Move my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Townsend, will you second the report?
I second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Any member? Okay. That is no member, so now we can move towards the vote. Electronic poll will be opened shortly. Alison, are you okay there, Alison?
I'm still seeing councillors Anwar, Baker and Commis as not having started the vote.
Councillor Anwar hasn't voted for his own report yet.
It's
Chair, I
going
had
through
to have
now.
a headache, Bill.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I thought I'd done my bit.
No, you're okay, no problem. I'm trying to preserve my battery by keeping my camera off, but I'll put my camera back on now. Is that all done, Alison?
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, I can't unmute myself while I'm sharing my screen. That was all completed and everybody voted in favour.
Everyone voted, so that has been carried. So Councillor Anwar's report has been carried. Item
And
6.
I will just bring Councillor Fewings back from the lobby, Mr. Mayor.
Please do. Oh, welcome back, Councillor Fewings. Welcome back. We can now move on to item 6G, amendment to mayoral protocol. I will move the recommendations as set out in the report. Madam Deputy Mayor, will you second the report?
I'll second that report. Ought I not to declare an interest in that?
No.
No? Okay.
No, you're okay. Any member, which I'm just going to check out of courtesy. I can't see any member there. Oh, is there somebody coming there? One second. Okay, that's fine. We will now go to the vote. Is there a vote on this, Alison? Yeah, okay. That's quick. Very quick now, Alison. Okay.
We're just waiting for a couple of members to hit the submit button, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. Come on, members.
Councillor Fewings, I'm sorry, tonight it doesn't seem to be registering your final choice. So if I close the poll, are you happy to submit your vote verbally?
Yes, I think it's because when I come back in, all the polls that you've previously had are there, and I close them all. So
okay.
it could be that. I'm happy to give it verbally. It is 4.
Thank you. So that's 42 votes for, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Alison. That's item 6G carried. Now we can move on to item 6H, appointment of deputy mayor, committees, working groups and forums. I will move recommendation 1, appointment of Councillor Cosima Townley as deputy mayor for the remainder of 2020-21. Madam Deputy Mayor, Councillor Anne Kelly, just to be clear, will you second that?
Yes, I'll second that.
Any member? You're okay with that? We're all happy with that? No dissent? We're all good with that? You don't need to vote for that, I'm sure, Alison. Members, that appointment is carried. Councillor Cosima Townley, would you please take the position of Deputy Mayor from this point forward? Cosima Townley, please could you read your office of acceptance?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd just like to say what an honour it is to serve Burnley in this new position. I, Cosima Townley, having been elected to the office of Deputy Mayor of the Borough of Burnley, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code to the code of conduct which is expected of members of the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're very welcome, and many congratulations, Councillor Townley. That was great. Great to see you. Look forward to working with you for the remainder.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Can I just say congratulations to Kazi Tyner for being Deputy Mayor?
Yes. I think the congratulations are coming in all round. So congratulations, Councillor Townley. I look forward to working with you over the remainder of the year, and I'm sure you'll do the town proud in your role. I will say this personally. I want to say a massive thank you as the Mayor of Burnley for the work you've been doing as a volunteer consistently through the test and trace at numerous places. So well done. And actually, I'm sure you was the one that did my test as well. It was very painful, but it was very much needed. Thank you, Councillor Townley. Could I also take this opportunity to thank Councillor Anne Kelly for agreeing to be the Deputy Mayor again, serving the town at this very short-term basis. Thank you, Councillor Anne Kelly. I will now move to the remainder of the recommendations in the report. Recommendations 2, 3 and 6 are uncontested, so we will vote on these first. Any member? You've all got a list there. Recommendations 2, 3 and 6 uncontested. If there's no member, we shall now go to the vote. Basically, when I say vote, we're all in favour, yeah? There's nobody dissenting, is there? No, so we can move on. Appointments to committees, working groups and outside bodies. I will first move the uncontested appointments as set out in the populated version of item 6H published in the supplement. It was published in the supplement. Madam Deputy Mayor, will you second those? Madam Deputy Mayor Townley? I've lost my deputy mayor. It's only been 2 minutes.
I second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That's a relief.
Sorry.
Okay. Any member? Stay with me, people. We'll go to a vote by assent. So if there's no dissent, we shall move them as carried. Well, we shall they are treated as carried. So that's sorted. Now the following nominations have been received, and these will be contested. Burnley Leisure Trustee, Councillor Margaret Lishman, Councillor B. Foster, Councillor Ivor Emo, and Councillor Andrew Newhouse have been nominated as Burnley Leisure Trustees. Members may vote once either for Councillor Lishman, Foster, Emo, or Newhouse, or they may choose to abstain. Okay? It's really important for you to know that. The nominee with the majority of votes will be elected. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 16.6, members will cast one vote each. If there is not a clear majority in favour of one member, then the member with the least number of votes will be eliminated. Okay? And a new vote will be taken until a clear majority is reached. So, the poll is going to open shortly, so please vote for either Councillor Margaret Lishman, Foster, Emo, or Newhouse, or to abstain in the electronic poll opening shortly.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just set out if I can. We have 42 members in the meeting, so the majority will be 22.
Alison, my polling thing's not come up.
Right, when we get through to the results, do you want to cast your vote verbally, Anne? And I'll do it at that stage because I can see the rest of the results then,
Yeah,
because there are
happy.
so many options.
Yes, of course.
Councillor Emma Payne it's not showing that you've started your vote. And Councillor Mahana, I think you need to press submit. Okay, should we take those ones verbally when we get through to the results, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, let's move progress. I agree with that.
Oh.
Councillor McCann, you wanted to say something. You just put YY as in type the letters out in the chat. Is everything okay, Councillor McCann?
It's okay. It was an error, was that?
No problem. No problem.
Councillor Emma Payne has also dropped out of the meeting. I don't know if Councillor Mark Payne can shed any light.
Yeah, she's lost her feed, but she's on the phone. If you want to take a vote off her.
Yep, I can do.
Oof. Okay. This is interesting.
Right. So we have. I need to take the manual votes as well. So Councillor Emma Payne.
Councillor Payne.
Mark. Can you put the phone near the microphone?
I've lost her now.
Right, let's move on to Councillor Kelly.
I'll vote for Margaret Lishman.
Okay.
Quite right too.
Who else is missing? Councillor Emma Payne. Who else did you say?
Councillor Lorraine Mahana.
It's Andrew Newhouse.
Oh.
Okay. Councillor Payne voted Andrew Newhouse.
Yep, got that.
Okay.
Councillor Mahana.
D.
Andrew Newhouse was that?
Yeah.
Was it Andrew Newhouse he voted? I heard B. Then.
D for Donald.
Okay, D. Okay. D.
Okay, so that means Councillor Margaret Lishman has 10 votes, Councillor B. Foster 21, Councillor Ivor Emo has 6, and Councillor Andrew Newhouse has 6.
Oh dear. So who do we drop?
We would usually eliminate the lowest, but we have a tie for the lowest.
Okay then. What's the process here then, Alison?
Chair, you have a casting vote.
Oh, do you have a casting vote? I didn't who to
Yes,
knock
you
off?
do.
Who to knock off?
Who you would vote for? Who you would vote for, Chair, and then we will eliminate the other member.
So I have a casting vote. I'll have to vote. Well, looking at that list, all wonderful candidates. Well done, all of you. But I'm going to vote for Councillor B. Foster.
No, sorry, it's the bottom
No, that
two.
doesn't.
Oh, you want me to vote the bottom two?
Yes,
you want me to
please,
vote
Chair.
between... Now, that's a very difficult one. Goodness sake, this is getting tough. I've got to choose between who? Councillor Newhouse and Councillor Emo. Oh God. Councillor, I vote for Councillor Newhouse.
Okay, thank you. So that means that Councillor Emo will be eliminated, and we will go to another vote.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
What a process this is, eh? We've got Councillor Emma Payne joined us as well. Missed all the action there. Okay, we're gonna have another vote now, and then obviously Councillor Emo's name isn't going to be on that list. I've never faced that much pressure for years.
Okay, members. Councillor Arif Khan, I think you need to press the submit button or confirm, and Councillor Leanne Pate. It's, oh, yeah. Okay, I think that is done.
Okay, just waiting for the results now. Are there any manuals on this one, Alison? Are we're all good?
I think everybody has voted, Chair. We'll just check as we go through.
Okay, we've still not got majority, have we?
No, we haven't, Chair, so we need to now eliminate Councillor Andrew Newhouse and vote again.
Okay, so now be two options between Councillor B. Foster and Councillor Lishman. So Councillor Newhouse will have to depart.
Help but think, Mr. Mayor, if I'd have entered, we wouldn't have been having all this now.
Well, I didn't get that bit, but anyway. Another vote for you, Councillor Hosker.
I know that, we wouldn't have been all this now, I'd have been straight through.
Well, it's just tough you're not here then, are you? It's a system that we've got to adhere to. That's what I'm being told. Last vote now.
Councillor Townsend and Councillor Hall. It's just Councillor Hall it's showing now as hasn't voted, and then Councillor Mahana, it's saying that you need to confirm.
Sorry, I did vote. Councillor Lishman, please.
Right, and we'll take Councillor Mahana's as well, because that's not coming through. Okay, so Councillor Hall voted for Councillor Lishman. Councillor Mahana, can you confirm your vote, please? Oh no, it's through. It's just not showing.
You've got missing. You've got
We've had an abstention, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so that means, yeah, that means that because of the abstention, we've got Councillor Foster at 21, Councillor Lishman on 20 with the extra vote there. So am I right in saying that's clear a majority there? So we have now on that position for the Burnley Leisure Trustee, Councillor Foster has been elected. So I declare Councillor Foster to have been elected as a trustee of Burnley Leisure. Now I move on to the Burnley and Pendle Citizens Advice Bureau. The vacancies for an experienced opposition member, Councillor Peter McCann and Councillor Cosmo Townley, have been nominated to Burnley and Pendle Citizens Advice Bureau. Members may vote once either for Councillor McCann or Councillor Townley, or may choose to abstain. The nominee with the majority of votes will be elected. Please vote for either Councillor McCann or Councillor Townley, or abstain in the electronic poll, which will be opened very shortly.
Okay, we've got a couple of members who need to confirm their vote.
Yeah, can the members confirm their votes, please?
Excellent, that's done.
Okay, results are coming. Who have we got? You've got majority, I think. Yeah, 22.
Sorry, do you need me to zoom that in, Chair?
Yeah, this time around, my sight goes a bit funny. Yeah, so we've got 22 was the majority, wasn't it? Clear majority.
Yep.
And that's been achieved. So Councillor Townley has achieved the majority needed there to be sitting on the Citizens Advice Bureau position. That's been sorted. Thank you. I declare Councillor Townley to be elected as a trustee of Burnley and Pendle CAB Citizens Advice Bureau. We now move on to LCC Health Scrutiny. Sorry about that, people. There are 3 nominations for 2 positions. The first position is for the main lead member and the second for the substitute member. On the position of lead member, Councillor Tom Commis, Councillor Paul Campbell and Councillor Andrew Newhouse have been nominated. Members may vote once, either for Councillor Commis, Councillor Campbell or Councillor Newhouse, or may choose to abstain. The nominee with the majority of votes will be elected. We've gone through the process. If it's not majority, you know the drill. We'll have to do it again. You may vote now. Okay, how are we getting on, Alison?
Councillor Gordon Lishman, have you got an issue with your vote? Oh, no, it's going through now.
He was deliberating for a while there.
Okay, so we have a majority there, Mr. Mayor. I'll just scroll down so that everybody can verify their votes.
If you're all happy with your votes, I can declare the result. Just want to, once Alison takes it back up, I'll just let you know that the poll is closed and there's a clear majority there. So Councillor Paul Campbell has been appointed as lead member on the LCC Health Scrutiny. On the position of substitute member, you've got that's going to be between Councillor Commis and Councillor Newhouse. Is that right?
That's right, Chair.
Thank you. So you now have a vote on whether you're going to vote for Councillor Commis or Councillor Newhouse in a moment, and Alison loads up.
Councillors Anwar and Townley. Oh, no, they're going through now.
It's probably your Wi-Fi connection there, taking a minute or so. Okay. Well, we don't seem to have a majority there, or do we? In this, there's only 2 people. Yes, there's only 2 people. So, what's the process there, Alison? Just want to check that with you.
We do have 11 abstentions, though, Mr. Mayor.
So, what? Do you still need 22?
No, you don't. No, you don't.
No.
No, you don't. We're fine now. I think we can declare that Councillor Andrew Newhouse has been appointed as a substitute member on that. I got confused there. Sorry about that.
No, it's
So Councillor Newhouse has been appointed as a substitute member to the LCC. Is that right? Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you very much for that. Burnley Acorn Fund, 3 places. We have received 6 nominations for 3 places on the Acorn Fund. In accordance with Rule 16.6, members will cast 3 votes each. Make a note of that, not 1, but 3 votes each. Any member receiving a clear majority of votes will be considered elected, and a new vote will be taken for the remaining places. If there's no clear majority in favour of any member, then the member with the least numbers will come off as before. So we'll do this until we have a clear majority. Councillor Cosima Townley, Councillor Anne Kelly, Councillor Anne Royal, Councillor Andy Thatchell, Councillor B. Foster, and Councillor Lorraine Mihana have been nominated. So please vote for either Councillors Townley, Kelly, Royal, Thatchell, Foster, or Mihana, or abstain. Voting is open. 3 votes, people. 3 votes, don't forget.
There, Mayor, when you told me about it, I'd already sent mine off.
Say that again, Councillor Hosker, please.
I said a bit late when you told us that. I'd already sent mine off. I didn't know you got 3 votes.
It did say on it, Councillor Hosker.
Well, I didn't hear you.
Okay.
we can take the additional
Yeah.
2 when we get to the results, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'm going to say that we can. Councillor Hosker will always we can take at the end. No problem. Don't worry about it.
I was going to say stick to Sky Sports.
Mr. Mayor, I'm in the same position. I've only made 1 vote. I think I was too keen. That's why.
I would like to say great minds think alike, but I won't.
Yeah.
Because you got it wrong. So
Yeah.
we'll take it at the end. We'll take it at the end.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I only made 1 vote as well.
Is that Councillor?
Emo.
Councillor Emo.
Councillor Emo, easily done. Don't worry about it. We'll take the remaining 2 votes at the end.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Ferris, same boat. Thanks.
No problem. No problem. That vote's not doing well at the moment, but let's just keep going.
Mr. Mayor, shall we just start the vote again if it's easier?
If it's possible,
Here.
shall we just do it again? Yeah, that's okay. Everybody, let's do it again. You have 3 votes. 1, 2, 3. Make them choices count. When you're ready, Alison.
Yeah, just bear with me, Chair. No.
Okay. Here we go again. Take 2. Don't forget to press submit at the end.
So if we just let members confirm that, Councillor Motter said you've only cast 2 votes. Would you like to cast a 3rd?
Yeah, it wouldn't let me cast the 3rd. I'm royal for the 3rd.
And so Anne Royal now has 25.
So I see 3 people over 22 there.
Yeah, so do I, Chair. If we can just make sure that members have confirm the votes. That looks like everybody's voted 3 times.
Yeah, that looks pretty clear cut there. So basically, them 3 places have been filled on the Burnley Acorn Fund by councillors Andy Thatchell, Councillor B Foster, and Councillor Anne Royal. Okay.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, members, for your cooperation in that process. Now we are moving very swiftly on to item 7, reports from committee chairs. I first would like to look at 7A, which is scrutiny. Councillor Andy Thatchell, would you please move your report?
I'll move my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any member? Okay. Nobody wants to come in there? Oh. Okay, that's fine then. That's great. We should now move on to item 7B, audit and standards report. Councillor Paul Campbell, will you please move your report?
I move my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Any member? No. Oh, just double check that. Okay, no. Okay, that's fine. Item 7C, licensing. Councillor Arif Khan, will you move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move my report.
Thank you. Any member? No member.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Is that you, Councillor Oscar?
It is. Mr. Khan has got time this week. I'd like to have a talk about licensing. I have a couple of issues I want to bring up with him personally. Okay.
Yeah, you happy with that? If he just emails you, Councillor Khan, to get in touch with you? Or calls you?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Good. I always like connecting people. That's great. Councillor, that's done, sorted. 7D, item 7D, development control. Councillor Frank Kant, busy night for you tonight. Would you move your report, Councillor Kant?
Yes, I'll move my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any member?
Yes, yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Who we speak? Who is that?
Councillor Kelly.
Councillor Anne Kelly. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to make members aware, with the development control report, the development on Higher Saxefield was originally refused when it was for 130 houses. It came back to committee and was accepted with 117 houses. They have now gone to appeal to go back for the 130 houses. It's going to be, the officers are going to have to really strongly support our decision. And I'm sure that they will do, because it was originally for 130, it was refused, that we accepted the 117, and now they're going back for the 130 to appeal. So
okay.
just for information for members.
Well, thank you very much for that information.
Thank
Councillor.
you.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to mention as well the fact that we passed planning permission for the petrol station at Ganna Top there. When I was chair, it was passed on conditions, and the conditions haven't been met. And because the conditions haven't been met, I'm questioning judgment if it being passed and what we're going to do about enforcing the judgment.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor? It is an individual item on the report. I'm not sure whether you can answer that straight away. Councillor Kant, do you want to come back on that quickly, or you want to decide the time to get back to Councillor?
Well, yeah, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, all I can say is that if they're not complying with the conditions, we do have a policy of enforcement. It needs to be referred, and if you like to get in touch with me, tell me what conditions have been flouted, and I will pass them on to our enforcement team.
Yeah, okay, that's a generous offer there, Councillor Hosker, to take that forward.
I'm only mentioning that, Mr. Mayor, because
Yeah.
I'm mentioning it because the fact is, when I passed it that night and I voted to pass it, along with the Green Party, Andrew Fewings, there were certain conditions about having electric for cars there at the petrol station. There's no such thing been done since in the Green capacity.
Okay, Councillor Kant, you just
Yeah,
said
yeah, we'll have a look into that. Yeah,
Point noted there, Councillor Hosker. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Kant. Let's move on to item 8, strategic plan progress.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I've got an RTS in.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. I do apologise, Councillor Fewing. Let me just have a look. Yeah, you have indeed. Go. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to come in on that because there's just a little bit of not quite correct information there. So when that petrol station was passed on Barracks Road, I was not a member of the Development Control Committee because I was the sole Green and at the time was excluded from meetings. What happened is that I made representations as a ward councillor because it's in my ward, and as a result of that, on the 9th, the condition for the electric charge points were put in. Just a quick update on that. The owner of the site did put in a request to have that condition removed, and as far as I'm aware, the last update I had from the council officers was that condition, that application to remove the condition was refused, and obviously they are enforcing it, but not going as quickly as I would like. But with COVID-19, it's a shame because it did say that station wouldn't open until the electric charge points were in place. So it is an important issue, but I wasn't on the committee. I certainly did not vote for a new petrol station. I just wanted to clarify that. So I guess that means that Councillor Hosker was not chair of the committee at the time. Thank you.
Yeah, guys, councillors, can we just? I recognise your concern about individual cases, but surely this medium isn't the right opportunity to speak about it. Please do contact Councillor Kant individually and get these resolved. But these are strategic reports, and I understand your frustration, but you've got to make sure you also contact the relevant chair of this committee to take this forward. I do not want to stifle debate. I do not want to withdraw your democratic right, but just some of these are individual cases. He said this, he said that. Please just be focused on this issue.
Mr. Mayor, you allowed the comments to be made and they were incorrect, and I'm correcting the record. That's the only reason why I'm speaking.
Councillor Fewings, my comments are not just only to you, I'm just to everyone's asking these questions. We've got to look at these from a strategic point of view. I know it's not individual to yourself, it's to everybody, so I respect what you said there. Let's move progress.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just finish on this.
What would you like to say now, Councillor Hosker?
I'd just like to correct on this. If Mr. Fewings weren't on the committee at the time, then I apologise. I got that bit wrong. But I was definitely on the committee. We'll make that decision. I'll check on dates about him.
Okay. Let's just have that kind of agreement to disagreement there about what's happened here. I appreciate you've got one version, but just be careful when you have some of these issues. Always consult with officers as well. Some of these issues you're raising here, they're very valid issues. I'm not going to knock them back, but please understand there are officers there within the planning department. You can also raise these as well. So let's stop there. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Move on to item 8, strategic plan progress reports. I will take each report in order. I will ask for any questions on the report, and the executive member will respond to one question at a time if there's a few, and if there's quite a few, I'll take a few together in the orderly manner. The same procedure will then be followed for observations. Can I remind members with a question or observation to clearly quote, always say this please, clearly quote the page number and reference when asking or observing. Also, will members please be concise with their questions and observations. I'll have a look at this in a second, but can I ask Councillor Mark Townsend, will you please move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move my report, and in doing so, I just want to say a few words about the situation that the town's facing at the moment. I think it would be remiss of me because I talk about it in PR1 in terms of the COVID infection and where we are from a public health point of view. It's a really difficult period for the town. I think we can all agree on that. 4 weeks ago, when I became leader of the council, infection rates were increasing rapidly, and we were the first area to go through the 300 infection rate per 100,000 level in the country, and we were the highest in the country at the time. So it was a really alarming situation. At the time, I was calling for additional restrictions. The restrictions I was calling for at the time was very similar to the Northeast restrictions in terms of restricting household mixing. And it was clear to me with the information that was in front of me that the prevalence was right across all wards within the borough. and it was across all age groups as well. And it was a really serious situation we were facing. And bearing in mind, any decisions you take have 2 weeks before you actually see any results, at least. Everything's baked in. We then went into the tiering system, and we were placed in tier 2 originally. And I was of the opinion at the time, and I remain of the opinion, that that sent completely the wrong message to the people of this town at the time. It was a relaxation of the measures that we were already in some respects, and their rates were spiralling out of control. There's obviously a very strong view that even tier 3 isn't strong enough and going to get the infection rates down. And I think what's happening right across Lancashire now is displaying that 2 weeks into tier 3. But it was, and it still remains, the only game in town for tackling high infection rates. That's the only thing that governments are actually interested in talking about at the moment. We can talk about circuit breakers, we can talk about full lockdowns as perhaps what's needed, but as far as government's concerned, it's a tiering system, and that's what we have to deal with. So we have to deal with the world as it is, perhaps now not how some people would like it to be. But I was clear that we needed a strategy if we were going to go into tier 3, that it was predominantly about saving lives, but we have to protect people's livelihoods as well. And really, it was all about negotiating with leaders across Lancashire and with Cabinet Office about getting the best deal that we possibly could to ensure that we were going to protect lives and livelihoods. At the end, we got a 30 million. And I know there's strong arguments on many cases to say it wasn't enough, and I agree it wasn't enough. But at the time, it was 30 million more than what Liverpool had got, who were the first into tier 3. They'd just been given the standard £8 per head, and Lancashire had negotiated £28 a head in total when you put the whole package together. And we'd negotiated some different restrictions that Liverpool were compelled to make, and we didn't have to, such as around gyms. So, but since then, the infection rates across Lancashire have continued to increase up to this point. So tier 3 is still, debatable that it's going to work, and we may well, in another 2 weeks' time, have to face some other difficult decisions. But our situation is still serious. We're at around 450 cases per 100,000. We're no longer at the top of the league again nationally, or even in Lancashire, but it's still a very serious situation that we face. But overall, I'd like to say thank you to all the residents who've complied for many months now with the guidelines and adapted to changing situations. They've done a sterling job in terms of obeying the rules. But I have to say, there's still far too many within our town who are not complying. I went in a shop on Briarcliff Road last night. There were 8 people in the shop. It was only a corner shop, and I was the only one in there with a mask on. And that's the kind of thing that, we are facing. There are a few who are spoiling it for the many. And if we don't get better at compliance, we're going to face a really, really tough winter. There's no way the pubs are going to open with infection rates where we are at the moment. There's no shortcuts, but there is hope at the end of this. We do hear that the vaccine is getting closer, and there is hope on the horizon. And what we've got to do is make sure that Burnley is well prepared to come out of this really strong, fighting fit, and raring to go. And I'm sure we will be. But it's incumbent on everybody in this borough to comply with the rules. It won't just go away on its own. We've got to comply and work hard at this for the sake of the borough and to save lives and to save livelihoods. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome, Councillor Townsend. I've got 2 questions there. Let's take Councillor Baker, then Councillor Lishman. Councillor Baker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask this of Councillor Anwar later on, but there's nothing on his portfolio that I can ask it on. But it completely relates to what Councillor Townsend's just been saying. I have a shop in town, and everybody stops outside the shop to drop passengers off because it's just between around all the banks. And I'm more worried about the taxis, especially the private hire taxis that are not insulated from the drivers, if you will, by a window or anything. They're coming into town with a load in the back, not wearing masks. The drivers aren't wearing any masks. So all I can presume is that anyone has got any infection in there, it's circulating within the car. As soon as they get out, the odds are that the infection is still circulating within that lot, and the next people that get in are going to be exposed to it. So at the very least, we should wear masks. Now, I did think perhaps every car should have the NHS symbol on it, if you will, to scan getting in, but that might be a bit ridiculous because if they have one case of it, then you might have got in 10 times after that, and you might not be relevant to you or anything like that. But I feel the way that the licensing committee should be looking at this is saying that the drivers have to wear masks, and they have to ensure that their passengers, when required, well, when they're able to, also wear a mask. Because the amount of traffic in Burnley on private hire is far more than individual cars. But the mixing, matching, and I think there's quite a lot of cross-infection, but it's not measured, so I can't prove it.
I don't want to stop your passion there, Councillor Baker. I'm just waiting for that question at the end as well. You asked a few questions. Is that the last bit of question you want to ask there, Councillor Baker?
The question was, can the council leader, through his executive, implement anything to make sure that taxi drivers are more insulated and don't provide a source of a big source of infection? I mean, they might have 20 or 30 people a day in that they're meeting in very close confined quarters where the virus can spread. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Townsend, should I take in Councillor Lishman? Do you want to answer that quickly now? What do you want to do? Should I bring other people in? We've got Councillor Lishman and Councillor Hosker. That'll be a set of 3. What do you want to do, Councillor Townsend? Okay, Councillor Lishman, you can ask your question, and then we'll have Councillor Hosker after you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to ask 2 related questions, which are on PR1 and PE1A, and both, I hope, supportive of the leader's position. In the first case, I understand entirely what he's saying, that he's been in a difficult position, that what he's been dealing with is the only game in town, and certainly not how some would like it to be. Would the leader agree with me that the degree of top-down centralisation and hard-line negotiation in the face of this pandemic coming from government is an absolute abuse of central government authority? And secondly, in relation to PE1A, could I draw his attention to the fact that as a result, not just of lockdown, but also of the closure of an increasing number of bubbles, particularly in secondary education in Burnley, it is likely that students from our town, as from the whole of the north of England, will be significantly disadvantaged in next year's round of examinations, so that pupils from the north of England are likely to score less than pupils from the areas of England which haven't faced our challenges, and that it really is important that government recognises this and that he and others should make representations to ensure that our school children are not unduly disadvantaged.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Lishman. Councillor Hosker, what is your question?
First of all, I'd just like to agree with Councillor Townsend. It's not often this happens, but I'd like to agree with what he says because it does make common sense. And my question being, because I'm a private hire operator myself, and because if anybody gets on our buses, I ensure that we have to have buses. When they fall up, be told to wear masks. Is it not something that the council can enforce for these private hire drivers? Because if you're using them 1 minute, then they come in using us another, we could get infected.
Okay, that's your question. That is it now. No more questions now. Councillor Townsend, thank you for that question, Councillor Hosker. Councillor Townsend, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just referring to Councillor Baker's question regarding taxis, I totally agree with him in terms of the taxi trade does need to get better. And I have been an advocate of saying, okay, we're never going to be able to enforce our way out of this, but some enforcement is a strong encouragement for others, and there is a recognition that enforcement does need to get stronger. And part of the £8 per head that government have allocated to Lancashire, which equates to £12 million that's shared out around the county, part of that is to increase the enforcement activity and try and get more people to comply. So I'm not saying there's an overnight solution here, but it is certainly on the radar of leaders and chief executives across Lancashire to try and get a solution and some remedies in place for people who just flout the rules, including in the taxi trade. In terms of Councillor Lishman's questions, couldn't agree more in terms of the top-down centralisation and the authority. We know our area best. You know, we were quite strong in that. But as I said, tier 3, the government had a set route map in terms of what tier 3 was made up of, and basically telling us what needed to happen. I think after 2 weeks, and probably over the next 2 weeks, we'll see that just the closing of the pubs and some of the hospitality sector is not going to have had the impact that we need to have. Where then we go after that, we'll just have to see. But I think we could have come up with some better solutions, leaving it to Lancashire on its own. We know our area best, and we could. And I think all leaders of all colours agreed on that, but government just weren't listening in that respect. And in terms of the pupils being disadvantaged next year, that is certainly a case. I think it's clear when you look where the tier 3 places are and how many school children are being sent home from school, it's clear that this is going to have an impact on their opportunities and their chances in next year's exams. And if nothing else, I hope, and I will take on board what he said in terms of making representations to all those concerned, that we do need to look at this and be looking at it early so that pupils get a clear view of what's going to happen next year. I know one of the devolved administrations, I think it's Wales, have already taken the view that it will be done on assessment next year rather than exams at GCSE, the old O-level standard, as I know it. I think A-levels are still talking about exams, but we do need to keep that under constant review, and I will take that on board. And I note Councillor Hosker's question that I think refers to the response I've just given to Councillor Baker. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, on a point of personal explanation, can I just add to my comments and Councillor Townsend to the effect that, of course, the education sector.
Are you making an observation, or is this a question?
No, I was making a personal observation to the effect that I agreed with his comments, and I noted that the Education Minister in Wales is a Liberal Democrat.
Okay. I think Councillor Townsend noted that as well. But you noted that. Councillor Anwar, you have a question, I believe, and then you have you first, and then Councillor Hussain. Councillor Anwar.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to come in because it was brought up by Councillor Baker with regards to the issue on licensing, and he mentioned it's in my portfolio and it's not mentioned.
Can I just stop you there, Councillor Anwar? You will get a chance to come in on this under observations, but I think we've got questions at the moment, so I will bring you back in later. I promise you. I'm just asking questions to the lead at the moment. I'm sure you understand that is what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just that the question was around my portfolio, so that's why I was asking if I may. I can come in now, but I can wait till later. Thank you.
Please, I will bring you in later, Councillor. I promise you there. Councillor Hussain, you have a question? Please make this a question, Councillor Hussain, or is it an observation?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was going to observe.
Okay. Well, that means well, actually, if that's the situation, there's no more questions in the right to speak. So I will bring you back in, Councillor Anwar. Do you want to make that observation now?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, obviously around that, Councillor Townsend has answered the question, but if Councillor Baker does get in touch with me, one of the things that we are doing, and I can assure you that officers are working very closely in advising the trade, and we can pick that up privately. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for the Councillor Anwar. Appreciate your comments there. Councillor Hussain, come on with the observation. Can I remind councillors to just refer to page numbers as well and item numbers when you're making your observation? Just a kind little reminder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And observation with regards to what's been said, page 150, COVID and financial package, and with regards to that, I just want to make an issue with regards to what Councillor Baker has said. I think it's dangerous to label and people who go out and make a living, such as the taxi drivers, and condemn them for not wearing masks. I've been in various taxis, and I know a lot of people in my ward who work within that industry, and they are wearing masks. I have seen taxi drivers wearing masks, so it's dangerous to say that they're not. I think it's unfair that you pick up and there's no evidence, and I wish Councillor Baker that you would withdraw that remark. Secondly, I would like to see the licensing department provide more support to taxi officers in terms of making sure their passengers wear masks and how they should go about challenging that. And I think it's important that we support the private hire in doing that, maybe going through training sessions online, maybe suggesting ways of what they need to be doing. But we need to support that sector rather than pick on it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hussain. Other observations I'm looking at here is Councillor Anne Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 150, PE 1A.
Thank you.
I'm just a bit disappointed to see that there's only the college being mentioned there, because the students in our secondary schools who missed all that time from March until they've started somewhere else in September, our results this year, I know at Unity, are the best we have ever had. And I just feel that our GCSE students have been ignored and forgotten, because there's been nothing in the paper, in the news about the results, and there isn't even anything in this report today. I have a granddaughter who did a GCSEs this term, and they felt very abandoned by everybody. And I just think it's disappointing that the schools aren't mentioned in this report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, you're welcome, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Baker, can I take one more before I bring you back in, Councillor Townsend? I'm going to take one more observation. Councillor Baker.
Just to say to Councillor Shaw, I did not say all private hire vehicles were not wearing masks. I said a large proportion of them, and even some have passengers in the front seat, which again is not a good thing, but I'm more worried about the passengers in the rear seating areas. I think I've been following this obviously as an older person with regrets of what's happening, and I don't feel that we're behaving as well as we should be. And I agree with Councillor Townsend on this. I mean, one of the things is that we seem to want to put the whole country into lockdown. Now, to be absolutely honest, I can't see what somebody locked down in Kent is going to have an effect on what's happening in Burnley. So I think the localised thing is the best way forward, but we've got to follow the rules, and we've got to help minimise the spread of the virus. And anything that we do to do that, by wearing of masks, or perhaps even, I don't know whether they're supposed to clean the taxis out after somebody's been in it with sanitizer and things like that. But to me, it is a major source. Buses are not so much of a problem because they're big, fairly airy spaces, so people are quite well spread about. But in private hire taxis, it's very poor. It's very enclosed space. They come into town with the windows closed, sort of thing. So if they're wearing masks, I've no problem with it. But I think Councillor Hussain has to accept that, they're not perfect, and we've got to do everything we can to improve it and get the rates down in the town.
Okay,
thank you.
Your points noted. That is the last observation on the leaders' report. After that, I'll be taking no more observations. So, Mark, this is your final reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just coming back to the debate that's just there between Councillor Hussain and Councillor Baker, can I just assure that all councillors and the taxi trade who might be watching tonight, that they have our full support. We recognise the difficulties the trade is going through, with the shutting down basically of the nighttime economy and all the hardship that taxi drivers are having. And they will receive the full support of our licensing department in terms of ensuring that they are aware of their responsibilities and the responsibility of their passengers. And I'm sure a vast majority of taxi drivers are adhering to the rules and they'll get our full support in that. Councillor Kelly, I do take on board exactly what you're saying. I think, and perhaps you know, you're correct in terms of people's students' achievements this year haven't been really adequately recognised because it was totally overshadowed by the complete shambles that the government made of the process here in allocating in grades, and all the fantastic work that students did seemed to get overshadowed. And I will give an apology on this, my first night presenting my report. In perhaps I should have included more content around the individual schools. And I congratulate all the students across the borough for their success in their grades. And I know you have a close affinity with Unity, and I know they've done extremely well again. So well done on that to Unity and all the other schools across the borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Councillor Townsend. We now move on to the Deputy Leader and Executive Member for Health and Wellbeing. Councillor Leanne Pate, will you please move your report?
Thank you. Just in moving my report, I'd just like to add a wee bit in because obviously there's a lot happened. I'd like to thank my outgoing colleagues that have been working on bits of this portfolio. So that is Councillor Townley and Councillor Emo for their work that has been going on previously. And I'd also particularly like to say thanks for Councillor Townley for allowing me to continue in the Armed Forces Covenant role. And I think we've been a great team, and I'm really pleased that we're going to be continuing together to work on things in the future. So fingers crossed, because we do have some big plans for next year, and we would like to hope that things go well for those. I'd also like to give my thanks on record to the staff that have adapted to some very different and some very tough conditions over the last few months, and the volunteers that have stepped up as well. Just to note as well that things will be a little different for Remembrance Day commemorations, whilst it's not mentioned in detail in any reports. It is obviously a British Legion-led event, and we will make sure that people have some ways of paying their respects regardless of what type of event goes ahead. And also, over the next, I would like to say that, you know, while we've had all this comings together from the hub, what's happened over the last week in particular has been really amazing. The people that have come together so selflessly and so selflessly and so quickly to help those that are in need for the holiday hunger. I'd just like to reiterate that the hub will continue to operate. And I'd like to encourage both all the organisations that are out there and members of the public to keep using that hub. It is there for you. From a health point of view, there are some figures in the report, but I'd like to say that everybody has really got to knuckle down. As Councillor Baker said, we've got to just do our bit to try and prevent the spread of the virus. I'm aware that the COVID inpatient figure has likely breached 200 now in our local hospitals. And this is more than were in the beds in the first tranche. So whilst more people are surviving COVID, this means that more people are requiring beds and the more longer term care from long COVID. And this does put pressure on the health services. So whilst we might not like it, we absolutely have to do our bit. And I ask that colleagues here tonight do what they can to encourage compliance. And I must thank all those staff from doctors and nurses, but also particularly those less recognised staff, such as cleaners and the security guards that are working in these health settings, keeping us safe. And they are all valued, every one of them. And we could be much worse off without them. And with that, I'll move my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome, Councillor Pate. I see you have questions. There's no point asking if there's any questions. I can just see the questions here. Councillor Fewings, you've got 3 questions. So first question is Councillor Fewings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's page 154, PL4, and there's a reference to the play strategy. Can Councillor Pate will be aware that over the last 18 months, I've been asking the same question about the play strategy. I don't expect Councillor Pate to have an answer for me now, having only been in place for 4 weeks, but I just want to put it on record that I would love to hear back confirmation that Jesse's Park is not going to be closed, and I would be happy to speak offline about that. And just whilst I'm speaking, also to echo my thanks to all the staff that you know what Councillor Pate said is absolutely correct, and I can't fault the effort that's gone in, and also all the volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you, Councillor Townley. I'm going to take a few questions here. Councillor Townley, go ahead with your question, please.
I would first of all just like to congratulate Councillor Pate on taking up her new position. I'm very pleased that we've always managed to work together, and I know we have one aim in view, and we shall continue down that road until we fulfil it. My question is, after our very successful community, oh sorry, I really need to put a
page number, please.
Yeah, page number. PL4, page 153 and 154. I see that Townley has been extremely successful in the recent culture grants and has been awarded 116,000. Is Councillor Pate willing to discuss perhaps joint ventures with the other gem in our Burnley crown, which is Queen Street Mill, which managed to secure 65,000?
Okay, that's a pretty concise question. Can I ask last question here, Councillor Ferrier, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, first congratulate Councillor Pate on her position. I'd like to refer to PE1B, page 152. Considering the government has given Burnley Council 149,000 to help with the COVID crisis, I'd like to know how much of that has gone to or has been earmarked for the Together Hub. Thank you.
Okay, there are no more questions, Councillor Pate, so you may answer all the questions now.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for those kind words. To Councillor Fewings, I'm very much well aware of Jesse's Park and the situation it's been in. The play strategy will now be up for review, and of course, you know, a final answer on Jesse's Park will be in that next review of the strategy. But you know, as far as it stands, it is where it is. We will be reviewing that over the next couple of months, and if you'd like to make any representations, I'd be happy to hear those. Councillor Townley, Queen Street Mill, if you want to have a conversation about it, that sounds like something we need to talk about. And to Councillor Ferrier, I'm not 100% sure on figures, and I wouldn't like to try and mislead you. However, Sue has figures, Councillor Graham has figures in her portfolio, so it's specifics about finance, and she might have a more specific idea about what has been and is going to be allocated to the Burnley Hub. I hope those are okay for you.
Yep, thank you very much for that, Councillor Pate. Councillor, we're moving on to, one second, we're moving on to observations. Councillor Shah, is yours an observation? Councillor Shah?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, mine's an observation.
Okay, so we're moving on to an observation. So your observation, can you please let us know what your observation is?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And page 153, and it's just page 153. I don't know what it's at the top. It doesn't have a PL number. I might have missed it somewhere.
Okay, I'll give you that on this occasion. I'll let you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's with regards to the food bank and the recent sort of vote by the MPs in terms of rejecting the extension of free meals at schools for children. And I think I want to, you know, on here it mentions community groups, but I want to mention local businesses who've come together and I've supported this scheme in particular, and you know, local companies such as RPC, Marsden Solicitors, Usher Restaurant, and other small businesses around Burnley who have come together and who have helped. And I think that needs to be noted on the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I have another observation by Councillor Cosima Townley. Councillor Townley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of facts, I think, really, as an observation, following on from Councillor Hussein's comments just now. In fact, money has been given by the government in various grants. I won't go into them in detail, but I can supply them I can supply both facts and figures to him in detail at a later date. It is not true to say that we have tried to ignore this problem, and it is not true to say that anyone wishes to see any child or any family go without during this time of crisis. £149,000 was given to Burnley. It has been distributed through CVS, I believe, to the Burnley Together Hub. It was not ring-fenced because no one expects to have to ring-fence money when they see an obvious need. So I would like to follow up that it would be interesting to see the individual spends from the Together Hub, and to say that we in all parties across this nation are working to make sure that no family does not have anything to eat.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for that observation. So we have all the observations in now. That the floor is yours, Councillor Pate, to reply to them observations. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to, as a point of note, that Councillor Fewings has said he would forward me some representations that he's made, rather than raise it as a separate. Of course, everything that Councillor Hussain said is worth noting. It isn't in the report simply because of the timings. So yes, a lot of people have come forward in the last few days, but these reports came out earlier. That's why I had to open with some extra remarks. And yes, I think what we need to do is, after this brief period of holidays is over, is put out a proper note of thanks to all those organisations, businesses and individuals that have given time and money to make a thing happen. I'm not au fait with the monies that have been given in particular, so I'll decline to pass any further comment on Councillor Townley's facts that she's brought forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Pate. That completes.
Yeah, well, Mr. Mayor, can I
Yeah.
just do a point of information really? On
Yeah.
page 153.
Councillor Foster, I'll take yours as a final observation. I'll take yours as a.
Yeah, it's not really an observation, it's a point of note really, of information for people that hopefully people will be delighted with, like I am really. And that is at the top where it talks about Stoops and Archery Club Community Centre and
Right.
the way that they've stepped up. It's just a point of note that on October the 16th, Stoops and Archery Club did an asset transfer from Lancashire County Council, and they're now called the West End Community Centre. So it's just a point of note for everybody. And our congratulations go to Chris Keane, who particularly has worked tirelessly over the last 3-4 years to bring this about. And it's a centre that is in as we all know, a high area of deprivation. And it's great that we've managed to keep that. And we now need to give our support financially and practically to ensure that the good work that centre does carries on. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for that contribution, Councillor Foster, and hopefully things will become better and better with these community centres across the borough. Councillor Pate, would you respond to that very important information that provided by Councillor
I will do. Thank you. Yeah, it's really good news. I think that the work that Chris has put in, I have been through this process myself recently, and I can't tell you how difficult it is, how long it's gone on for. I'm surprised he's got any hair left, to be honest, but that centre is an absolute cornerstone of the community, as are Chris and his volunteers. The number of very little children that go there for some support, you just you know, you can't credit it. Friday night in there, you come out deaf, don't you? But they all come out with full bellies, which is really good. You know, much love out to Chris because he's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes your report, Councillor Pitt. We now move on to the report for the Executive Member for Resources and Performance. Councillor Sue Graham, will you please move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite happy to move this report, and I'll take any questions.
Yeah. Are there any questions? Any questions for Councillor Sue Graham? Yeah, we have one from Councillor Lishman, Councillor Townley. So, Councillor Lishman, can we have your question first?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On PF4 on page 160, I just wanted to ask about unconscious bias, whether the executive member has read the Equality and Human Rights Commission comments on unconscious bias training, but in particular about its propensity to increase conscious bias, which may be worth thinking about as part of this process. And secondly, on PF6, I note the comment in relation to homelessness and climate change on PF6, but does she accept that cross-party working groups of this sort can be a valuable approach which brings members from all parties and the whole council together in dealing with difficult and demanding issues of this sort?
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. Councillor Townley, can I have your question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. PF1, page 157. It's really to do with Liberata and the answering of telephones. I have, over several months now, received countless calls from distressed residents who have been either put on hold or gone into a continuous loop and then been cut off. I find it hard to believe that Liberata are actually reaching the required quota, and I'd rather like to know how this has been calculated or how the statistics have added up, because the number of people with dissatisfied comments I'm getting would belie what lies in this report.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Sue Graham, can you please respond to them questions? That's all I've got. Them 2 questions. Can you please respond?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I take that last one first, please? From Councillor Townley. I know what you're saying about the phone calls, and you know there's a lot of hearsay evidence that people are not getting through, and I think the problem is that they're hanging up rather than waiting, and then you get the fact that 81% of the calls are answered within time. So I'll look into that. I'm happy to look into that for you. I was talking to Liberata last Friday, and the difficulties that they have with the remote working and so on. They have been very good in dealing with the IT side of things, but I do accept your point. I think the phone side of things is still somewhat weak, and I will look into that further for you. Thank you. And then in terms of the what Councillor Gordon Lishman said about unconscious and conscious bias, I haven't had a chance today to read the whole of the Equalities Commission report. I've only sort of skimmed through parts of it. Unconscious bias is something that is very difficult to pick up on, very difficult to train against. But you are right that it does then lead to conscious bias. And I think the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, is determined to work with his colleagues and to deal with this issue of bias and, well, particularly anti-Semitism. On the other point that Councillor Gordon Lishman made about cross-party working groups, yes, it's extremely important that we do continue with some of these, and in fact, you know, where appropriate, create more cross-party working groups, because it extends the expertise and experience of members who maybe are not part of the executive or don't have lead roles in committees. And I know that when the government's review working group started to look at whether we should go back to the old committee system, one of the frustrations was that a lot of backbench councillors don't really get involved in activity. So cross-party working groups are a valuable role for that. If we're not going to go back to the committee system, and it seems that we're probably not, then with member structure working group and other committees such as scrutiny committee, we should do more to, we should definitely do more to have cross-party working groups working effectively. Task and finish groups, possibly more so than anything else. Thank you.
Just got one more question for you before I move on. I've got one more question for you from Councillor Fewings. If you can take that, please. Councillor Fewings, I'll give you the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's page 157, PL5, just in relation to the Climate Emergency Working Group. Obviously, as the chair of that group, I've been pushing for some officer time so that we can meet since February. And I stand and I wait for that resource so that we can progress this very urgent topic. My question is, there's a reference to £25,000 being used out of the Climate Emergency Working Group's budget. Obviously, that's something that when we passed the budget in February was a recommendation that had to come from the working group, which we haven't met. I don't think it's appropriate without any information being provided to the working group for this money to be used, because we are waiting for a number of things to come back to us where we recommended other things, and we need to be able to have all of the information so that we can decide what is the best use of those funds for this purpose. At the moment, as chair, I don't know if any other members have had any. I've had no information about this £25,000 trial, and I've had no response to the recommendations and costings that we put forward back at the beginning of the year. So I don't think we should be making this decision. And my question is, are we going to get that information ahead of a vote at full council about that £25,000? Thank you.
Okay, that's a question there. But before you answer that, can I just, 1 second, Councillor Graham, don't lose you in the spot there. Councillor Lishman, do you have a personal point of explanation there? Do you want to bring it in questions, or can you wait for observations?
Well, it might be helpful just to mention it now, Mr. Mayor. I should apologise to Councillor Graham. I was not intending to prod at the open wound of today's EHRC report on the Labour Party. I was referring to publications some time ago and more substantial on the general issue of unconscious bias training. So I'm sorry if, as I say, I prodded at an open wound.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for that, Councillor Ishman. Councillor Fiona, you didn't refer any page number or
I know.
I'll let Councillor Graham come in there. It's okay. Just remind people that make sure you quote numbers.
Sorry, no, I did. 157 PL5.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Graham. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Councillor Funes did. I knew exactly what he was referring to. And just to say that I did query this. I mean, Councillor Fewings knows that I was an active member of the Climate Change Working Group. So when I was discussing the writing of this report with the officers, I queried that, the figure of 25,000, and was it okay? And I understood that a conversation had been held with Councillor Fewings, and that he had agreed to this money being used to support a green business demonstrator project. Now, if I'm wrong, I apologise, but that is what I was under the impression of. The second point from Councillor Lishman, yes, you were prodding at an open wound there. I mean, it's something that the party as a whole is quite ashamed of. But I guess it was just a matter of timing, your question coming up on the same day as the Labour Party report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, you're welcome. I'm sorry about that, Councillor Fiona. You did make a reference. I didn't read my writing then. Observations, very quickly move on to that. Can we have a Councillor? We've got here observations. We have observation from Councillor Margaret Leishman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 157, PF1. I've listened to the comments about the number of calls answered and the 20% that aren't answered. And I will make the report that I've been making for the last 18 months. Answering a phone call, but not actually dealing with the problem that the person may have, doesn't engender satisfaction. And I hope that the member with this portfolio now will start to again tackle Liberata to get them to start to deal with a much more meaningful measure, which is not how quickly you can answer the phone, but how quickly can you actually deal with the problem that the person has come in contact for.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Hold there, Councillor Graham. I've got a couple of more observations. Can I bring them in before you respond? Is that okay if I bring them in, Councillor Graham?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a Councillor Townley observation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, page 157, PF1. I really just wanted to make the point that I actually, on a couple of occasions, do just for fun ring into the contact centre, and so I have had personal experience of this going round in circles, and I believe you me, I have not been putting the phone down. So I that's why I am very interested to know how they deal with this problem. Thank you.
Okay, that's just one more. We've got a bit of a mystery shopper there, Councillor Townley. Moving on to another Lishman, Gordon Lishman, your last observation, please, on this.
Yes, thank you. Also on PF4, on page 160 again, just to make the point, firstly, that as we thank our staff, it's worth remembering that there is some cumulative effect to the stress that they suffer during this time, and therefore some need to think about longer term support. And secondly, to make the point in relation to inequality, which is mentioned here, that in the previous administration's 10-point plan, there was very specific reference to tracking a wide range of elements of inequality in our borough, which related to health, wealth, income and power. And clearly, COVID will have increased those inequalities and may be set to do so even more. As colleagues know, I have a special interest in the social determinants of health, and COVID is likely to have a disproportionate effect on more disadvantaged people. And I do hope that that element of the former administration's programme will be carried forward as the new administration agrees to address and to document any change in the level of inequalities in all these areas.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lishman. That's the last of the observations. Councillor Graham, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, Councillor Lishman knows that she picked up the issue of phone calls from me, and now I've picked up the issue of phone calls from her. It's something that one day we will get to the bottom of, and you know, I accept the challenge, so to speak. Councillor Lishman, in terms of our staff, the exec member for resources and performance has got a responsibility on the health and well-being of council staff as well. So support for the mental well-being as well as the physical well-being of staff that we employ will be on my list, or is on my list, for regular attention. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Councillor Graham. We now move on to the next report, which is the report from the Executive Member for Housing. Councillor John Harbour, will you please move your report? Are you on mute, Councillor Harbour? You're on mute. That's better.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'll move my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Let me have a quick look. Any questions? You, Councillor Harbour?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Is that Councillor B. Foster?
It is, yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
The first
PE3 on page 163. I've been sitting on one of these working parties about the homelessness and rough sleeping in the village, in the borough, And I'm just wondering, the project's called A Bed Every Night, and I'm just wondering, it does say about how these 10 individual self-contained units are going to come about. I'm just wondering, particularly with the weather changing and going dark and cold, etc., have we got any idea of when these units will actually be coming on stream, please? Thank you.
That is only one question I received. We've got some observations, Councillor Harbour. There's only one question there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe this came up at scrutiny the other night, Mr. Mayor, and I think the officer did turn around and say that hopefully the 10 properties will be up and running by the end of November. I'm mindful of the weather outside at the moment. It's grim. COVID's making things difficult for everybody in all walks of life, especially around this situation as well. So the officers and our strategic partners are hoping to have these 10 properties ready by the end of November. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So we now move to observation.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Hoskey. Is that you?
I put a right to speak down. You ignored me.
I know I didn't ignore you. I'm not saying it. I would never ignore you, Councillor Hoskey.
Well, you may not have ignored me, but you did come across, and then before you know it, you were talking to Councillor Harbour.
Go ahead, ask your question, Councillor Hoskey.
So being polite, like I am,
Yeah.
I'm ready to let Councillor Harbour finish his speech.
Okay, you go ahead. Ask your question, sir.
I'd like to know what saying we've got over calicos, because I keep getting complaint after complaint after complaint. Have we any say? I know we have under restricted licensing in different areas, but as a council, this is getting a joke.
Okay, your question, Councillor Harbour.
Well, if there are any issues with Calico, Mr. Mayor, then Councillor Oscar can take those issues up with them. They are an important strategic partner, but the fact is, if there are issues within that company, within their tenants, then Councillor Oscar should be talking to them. I do meet with Calico on occasions, and if Councillor Oscar has any specific issues, he can mention them to me, and I'll raise it with Calico. But I've got to say, that with Calico, normally with the council, they've been I would think, an effective partner for us, especially around Perseverance Mill and other developments throughout the town. On a day-to-day working relationship with them, as I say, any councillor can contact Calico and raise issues with them. It's not just down to me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
Just 1 second before you come out, please. Just gentle reminder, Councillor Hoskey, please always note the page number and which reference you're making as well. Go ahead.
We'll go for PE 3163 then, have we?
Yeah, you can go for that if you want, mate. Yeah, that makes it feel better.
Mr. Mayor, the point I'm making is this: when you've got people phoning up, and 2 of these people, and they're downstairs, they live downstairs. It's a 3-bedroom house. 2 people downstairs, but they bought the. I don't know. They were going to buy the house, but they didn't. I don't know whose house is, but as far as I know, I think it's Calico's. Well, I know it's Calico's because they've been 35 times to fix a boiler. You couldn't make it up. I went to another house, and when I went to another house, it did big lopsidings. The house would drop into bits. I went to then another house. Lopsided doors cases, unfit, and kids living in it. I went to another house.
And your question's going to be, and your question's coming in a second, I believe.
Oh, my question's coming in a minute. And then I went to another house, and when you go, instead of having plaster up walls, it was plasterboard and papered over top. Calico's is a shambles. And I've asked John Harbour again, and I've made a good few attempts to Calico's themselves, and the only thing they do is pass the buck. And so the question being, what are they going to do about it? And then you've got them coming to planning, Calico's, and apply, we're going to build this and we're going to build that. They can't maintain what they've already got. They're a joke.
Okay, Councillor Harbour, would you like to respond to that question, or do you want to? It's up to yourself now.
Well, I will respond to it, Mr. Mayor. If
Yeah.
Councillor Oscar can forward the details of who he spoke to at Calico, the issues he's raised, and he's given a number of addresses, and as I say, who he's been talking to, the response he's got from them. If it's not good enough, which is what he's suggesting, then I will do my best to move some progress for him. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're very welcome. I have observations from who we have here. Councillor Townley, you have an observation, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. PL3, page 163. I really just wanted to say that hope that we do continue our good relationship with Calico. I've always found them extremely responsive, and I'd also like to thank the officers who helped myself and the negotiations with Calico, which have enabled the Burnley Wood Community Centre to come back into use. Not open quite yet, but jolly nearly there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, thank you for that. Just before you answer that observation, we've got Councillor Pate. Do you want to make a point of order?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it was just to say we shouldn't really be mentioning people's private addresses in this forum.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point. That let's just be very careful and not do that again, please. You have one more point, kind of observation coming through from Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I listened to what Councillor Hosker said with some interest. He may be aware that the Scrutiny Committee has set up a working group to look at Calico, which I've been asked to chair. And we've had a launch meeting, and there will be another meeting coming up fairly soon. And I think it's important that we do look at Calico and we do look at the way they operate. But what I would remind Councillor Hosker of, and also other members, is what the council's housing department used to be like. You know, Burnley Borough Council's housing department was truly dreadful. And whilst Calico has its failings, nothing compares to how bad Burnley Council's housing department used to be. For those of us who've been around quite a long time, there was Mr. Condensation. And every time somebody complained about anything, Mr. Condensation would turn up and say, oh, it's condensation. There's nothing we can do. And off we would go. I agree entirely with what's been said about identifying individual addresses. That's totally and utterly inappropriate at full council, and very regrettable that that's happened. But what I would say is, someone who has worked in social housing, the underinvestment by central government in social housing over many, many years is absolutely enormous. And I think Councillor Hosker, I can understand his frustration. I sense a bit of exaggeration maybe about what he said about Calico. But let's have a good, hard look at Calico. But I tell you something, Councillor Hosker, there are a lot worse housing associations than Calico. Part of Calico's problem is it's too small. Housing associations these days, the one I used to work for, Regenda, had many, many more properties than Calico. They were benefiting from economies of scale.
Hello, can you hear me?
And Calico suffers from diseconomies of scale. It's just not big enough in the modern world. And you look at the housing associations around here, they're becoming very big. And that is the reality. But overall, I think the housing stock, the social housing stock in this town has improved. When I look at my own ward, when I look at Berkeley Hills, when I look at Griffin, and I compare them to what they used to be 20, 30 years ago, there's no comparison. Calico's not perfect. It's not great. There are lots of outstanding issues. But I think, Councillor Hosker, with respect, you're over-egging the pudding, and you're making out Calico to be an awful lot worse than it is. Yeah, we've all been there. We've all been to someone's house and frustrated tenants, you know, and tenants who haven't had the service they deserve. I understand that entirely. But what I don't go for is that Calico is complete rubbish. They're not great, but they're not complete rubbish.
conscious, Alison made a point there. Before I bring Councillor Harbour back in to respond to my observations, I'm just conscious that we've gone past the time limit. So could I move that we continue the meeting? We're nearly finished. Is that okay? Or can someone second that?
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Observations, sorry, Councillor Harbour.
Mr. Mayor, can I just say that for some reason, because you've moved, your volume now is very difficult. I don't know if it's true for anybody else, but all of a sudden,
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
yeah, it's better now than what it was just a couple of minutes ago.
If you could,
Can't hear you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
Sorry.
Mayor, you're going again.
just 1 second, people. 1 second.
That's better.
It's better now.
Councillor Harbour, you have the floor.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I put in an RTS about the extension of time.
Yeah, we've just voted on that.
No, we didn't. So it was proposed. I put an RTS to speak about it.
Yes, I've seen your RTS, and we've looked at. We need to move extension beyond time limit, and I've moved that we move the meeting in order to continue the meeting as we're coming towards a close. And somebody.
Yes, and I want to speak on that.
Yes, go ahead if you want to. Let's. Yeah, go ahead then. Go on. I'll take your contribution.
Yeah, I just want to make an inclusivity point. It's very late. There are people with young children. If the chairing has not allowed the agenda to be fit into the meeting, and time has already passed without a vote on whether we should be extending it, for people that have young children or people that have disabilities, I just don't think it's appropriate to be doing this after the time. So I object to it.
So shall we have, Alison, shall we have a vote for this then? Shall we have a vote on whether we extend this meeting or not? For the sake of the meeting, shall we have a vote?
There's another full council meeting in a couple of days' time. This is ridiculous.
Well, with all due respect, Councillor Funes, you know, at the end of the day, we've got to get. There's backlog of a lot of decisions and important motions that have been held back for a number of months. That's why we're having a few meetings within a week, 2 weeks. So I just got to get this agenda through. You know, if it should go to a vote, let's go for the vote. So it's been moved and seconded, as in the extension for the time limit. So it needs to go for the vote. I hear your points, but from a democracy.
But the vote is coming after we've run out of time.
Well, it's
just point of clarification. It's Lukman here. I think Councillor Fewings is right. Because the standing orders weren't extended after 9:30, before 9:30, or before the 3 hours were up, technically the meeting automatically ends.
So we just pick this report up after the next meeting. Is that right then?
Well, we don't pick it up at the next meeting because it's not a matter for decision. It's just the meeting's ended, and not in the extraordinary meeting. There'll be an updated report in the December meeting anyway for the strategic progress item.
Okay, that's fine then. Have a good evening, people. Okay, this meeting is closed because we've gone past that.